Good evening. Welcome from wherever you're watching us from. My name is Anfumi Fatusin. I'm your host for this evening and also the convener of Renew the African Mindset, otherwise known as RAM. Renew the African Mindset is a platform where we discuss topical issues affecting the African communities. And the mindset obviously is born out of traditional beliefs, cultural values, also our exposure, experiences in life. And there are some issues which are kept quiet. People keep silent about it because of the cultural beliefs. And at times it's due to stigma. So attached to topics that we're going to treat today. The topic we're treating today is tackling the sexual abuse of minors. We've seen so many information going around on social media where adults, a full-grown adult, is assaulting or has raped a minor. And when we talk about a minor, we're talking about somebody of 6, 7 years of age. So today we're going to talk about it. How do we tackle this issue that it's becoming so rampant? The searchlight is on Nigeria for this discussion. And we notice that it's been happening on a regular basis. And when these people are caught, the perpetrators, there is always one excuse or the other. Are these people really sick? Or is it the fact that they cannot control themselves? Is there something wrong somewhere? Or is it due to traditional practices? Whatever it is totally unacceptable for an adult to molest a child or to rape a child in any shape or form. So this evening, I'm speaking from the UK, hence the evening, you could be there in the morning, wherever you are. We will be talking about it. And I have the panelists here from different angles. We'll be talking about it. From the psychological perspective, what is the impact on the minor? Also, we have a psychiatrist here. We want to find out the profile of a pedophile, because some of them are pedophiles. Or even if they're not pedophiles, but they have sexual urges which they cannot control when they see a minor. Why is that the case? We also have counselors here who will tell us the kind of counseling they provide to the minors or perpetrators of this heinous crime. And then we have 2 lawyers here with us. We have a criminal lawyer as well as a constitutional lawyer. They will focus on different aspects of the discussion for this evening. And also we have a director of public prosecutions in Lagos State to tell us how they handle these cases. So please relax, enjoy. The first 30 minutes of this discussion is going to be educative, and subsequent time we'll be spending here is going to be interactive, where we'll be taking questions from the audience, whether they are on the platform here with us on Zoom or YouTube. So we're going to start off with Dr. Olufemi Olubile. Dr. Olufemi Olubile is the Chief Executive Officer of Synthesize Consultants. He was previously the Chief Medical Director for Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, otherwise known as LASUTH. He was also the Permanent Secretary for Lagos State Ministry of Health. He's the author of 6 books and publications, which include Nigeria at Work, a survey of the psychology of work among Nigerians. Another book is Somatic Treatments in Psychiatry in Essentials of Clinical Psychiatry for Sub-Saharan Africa. There is also another book, Lonely Men, is also a newspaper columnist for Business Day, and it's called Human Angle. Welcome, Dr. Olubile, to Renew the African Mindset.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. You have a mental health care private clinical practice, and you're also into psychotherapy and advocacy. I have some questions in order to get a better understanding of the perpetrators. And one thing I want to, the message I also want to convey is that when we talk about perpetrators, we're not just talking about men, it could be women as well. We need to know that.
That's correct.
So we're not also saying that it's just from the perpetrator is a man to a young girl. It could also be an adult female to a young boy.
A school teacher to a pupil.
Exactly. Exactly. So why would an adult be sexually attracted to a minor?
Well, it's at the most developed level of it, it is a psychological illness. It's a disorder of sexual interest. Okay, but that's an extreme level that meets where it meets what we call caseness, where it meets the definition of illness. Most people who play in that field do not actually meet the strict definition of illness. They just have an urge, or like a craving, so that you could find people who are comfortably married and they just feel an inclination on the side to assault in a sexual sense, or to derive bizarre pleasure in a sexual sense from very young children of either sex. Then you could have issues within a family. You could have people whose orientation is towards the opposite sex or to the same sex. So it's a very wide field. But for whatever it is worth, the definition of illness, what we call caseness, what meets a DSM-5 diagnosis of pedophilia is somebody who feels a predominant urge for sex with underage children. Now you're looking at, when you say technically underage, maybe you're looking at 14 years and below. Okay, it's not really about the voting age, but about the level, the physical level of development of the individuals concerned. So
if I were to ask you, what's the profile of such a person? Would you say the person is a loner? Would you say such a person is a loner, or?
No, I'm coming to that. Okay. The criteria that the person feels an urge to have a sexual experience with people of that age, it could be exclusive, it could be in addition to having a sort of normal sexual relationships, it could be same sex, it could be a different sex, it could be within a family, it could be another family. Now, the hardcore are the people who have established illness. This has happened for 6 months, the person has got into trouble for it, is remorseful. That is the hardcore profile of somebody who is a pedophile. And of course, that is an illness. The ones on the fringe are the ones who don't meet all of those criteria. I mean, it could be somebody who has a personality disorder, who just does things against the rules of society. It could be somebody who in a current drunken state just expresses himself in that way. It could be somebody who is uncomfortable in even a normal marital relationship, who finds expression in that very unsavory and very illegal manner. So those are the fringe ones that indulge in pedophilic behavior, if you like, but they are not pedophiles by definition. So those, and those, of course, the standard profile will be the person, usually they are loners, usually you have a marginal, not very high, marginally low or not very high IQ. Usually they may have got into trouble with the law in some other contexts. Sometimes there are people who've experienced such treatment in the past, or who've had very difficult upbringings with their parents or with their surrogates and all of that. So those are contributors, and then sometimes there's a weak genetic association. In some family, you may find somebody who, in those family, there has been previously such behavior, and then it creeps up in them. That which is not to say that it's genetically derived, but I mean, those are just the associations that we find.
All right. Thank you very much for that. But then again, we've seen situations whereby the person is married, the person is socially connected, a very important person in the society. But then again, they have this, unusual behavior for, liking for minors. So really, we can say that it could be anybody, because at times you find it between a teacher and a school, a school child, and you begin to wonder, a teacher has duty of care up to a reasonable level, and they're into things like that.
It could also be an expression of power, that people find themselves in position of power or authority over others, and for some reason, they express it in that way, despite the fact that on other types of, in all the other areas of their life, they look to be reasonably normal.
Right. Okay. So in the UK, an adult who takes delight in touching a minor in an appropriate manner or wanting to sexually molest is a pedophile. In a way, that's the way we call it. Is pedophilia recognized in Nigeria?
Yes, it is recognized all over the world. Whether it comes to attention quite in the manner that it should is another matter, because it doesn't get the amount of airplay and public concern that it gets in the Western world. But it is there, and then there are cultural aspects too. There are parts of the country where it is conventional for people to marry children of even 8, 9, which actually, because that person is a technical minor in the UK, would meet a case definition of pedophilia. Okay. But it is not regarded as pedophilia in Nigeria, but it carries consequences. It's not, a safe and healthy practice, but it's a culturally acceptable practice within a certain part of the country.
Okay, so thank you so much for that. We'll come back to you to try and talk about the solutions to this kind of problems. How do we tackle it? Whether there is a particular treatment for a pedophile or somebody who just has this unusual behavior about them. Because would you categorically say that that person is a pedophile, or would you say that person just has a mental problem or has a disorder?
It's enough to say a person. I've already said that many people who don't meet the definition criteria of pedophilia in DSM-5 or in any of our current, that they still do this. So you have to give a label to them. You can say they have an inclination towards pedophilic behavior. And of course, it's a problem because they cannot, it's like a craving, it's like an addiction. They cannot stop themselves and they keep getting into trouble. So there must be some way of helping them. There must be some way of course, you have to deter them through the law, but you must make the behavior less rewarding and less likely to occur, because apparently they cannot do it by themselves. It's like somebody who has a passion for gambling and then totally loses control when it's in that ambience. You need to help them. They do, for the most part, need help, apart from the deterrence, apart from the legal prescriptions and all. There are different ways in which it is required to intervene. Whether somebody meets a full definition of being for pedophilia, or whether that person just behaves in that way, despite the fact that in all the other areas of his life, they appear to be fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
There are interventions that are possible. We can come to that.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the next panelist is a constitutional lawyer, human rights activist, president of Voters Awareness Initiative, and is also a pastor. So he's wearing 2 caps for the discussion this evening. As an apostle of good governance, he has passionately promoted democracy and rule of law for about 2 decades, as well as promoting a sound moral upbringing in the family, which is the foundation of any society. As a practicing lawyer, he participated actively in the pro-democracy struggle, along with notable legal luminaries such as the late Chief Gani Fawemi, late Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti, late Chima Ubani, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, another senior advocate of Nigeria, to mention a few, which led to the termination of the military rule in Nigeria in 1999. In the area of human rights, Mr. Wale Ogunade focuses on issues relating to various abuses such as illegal disengagement, termination or forced resignation, humiliation in the workplace, arbitrary illegal punishment, and oppression in all of its ramifications. He writes regularly on human rights issues and has appeared on several radio and TV programs. Mr. Ogwade is passionate about moral upbringing, respect for the elders, and sustenance of family and cultural tradition. Welcome, Mr. Ogwade.
Thank you so much.
Right, I have some questions for you in order to get a better understanding of what the rule of law is. As we said earlier, the focus is actually on Nigeria, and I'm sure you've seen so many video clips going all over the place on social media where a minor is being abused by an adult. However, let's get a better understanding. You're a constitutional lawyer, human rights activist, and also a pastor. You obviously are wearing two hats for the purpose of this discussion. As a constitutional lawyer, is there any difference in the terminology? Put it this way, as a criminal lawyer with Mr. Jide Lanley, who's going to join us later on for this discussion. Who is actually considered as a minor? Let's even start from there. In Nigerian law, who is considered as a minor? What does the Child Rights Act actually state? Mr. Ogwade?
I didn't hear your closing.
Who is considered a minor in Nigerian law?
Okay.
What age are we talking about?
Okay. A minor is someone who is obviously below age 8. So that's a child between 1 and 8. And to that extent, you can be sure that that person is seriously unprotected in terms of intelligence, knowledge, and ability. Is somebody that can easily be taken advantage of because of even the physical structure and his being or her being. So we find out that that type of a person is someone that easily can be taken advantage of by somebody who has intention of doing that. So to all intents and purposes, a minor is someone who is a small child who is not that ripe for any sexual activity, even physical abuse of all kinds. That's what the law says about a minor. And
wow.
For anyone who now goes ahead to either insult or abuse a minor, obviously has committed an offense, which is punishable by 7 years of jail term or 14 years jail term, depending on the situation under which the offense was committed. If it's true rape, okay. If it's something that is done maybe through deception or maybe drugging the child, then obviously it goes for a higher punishment of 14 years. So those are what the law says about minor and the offenses relating to taking advantage of a minor.
So if you are telling me that under the age of 8, so are you saying that even under, if a child is 10 years of age, that's an adult?
No. You can say now that he's a teenager. Someone between 10 and 17 is a teenager, or young adult, as they call it in Nigeria now. So someone after 18 is an adult. He has the right to think for himself.
But I'm talking about a minor. A minor now. Because you're saying to me that a minor is actually, because I have some psychiatrists here and I have some people who would actually pick you up on that. Because you're telling me that the law in Nigeria, if you are 8, then you're still a minor. So from 9, you are no longer a minor. Is that what the Constitution says?
No, what I said is that a minor is someone between 6 and 8. An adolescent is between 10 and 17. Or a teenager, either adolescent or teenager. Right. And an adult is somebody who is above 18. That's what I said.
I think
That's
I
my
will leave it
explanation.
there. I think I will leave it there because I'm going to ask the director of
The
public prosecutions
psychotics.
for Lagos State. I'm going to ask her to clarify that for me. So let me also ask: is there a law of entrapment in Nigeria?
Is there a law of what? Sorry,
A
the network.
law of entrapment in Nigeria.
I can't pick that language. A law on what, ma'am?
A law of entrapment in Nigeria.
Entrapment.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't think there is any law of entrapment, except maybe I didn't pick the language as you call it.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to ask Mr. Lanley, because he's a criminal lawyer. I'm going to ask, because he practices in both countries from a criminal perspective, he's going to answer that question because it's very, very important. There was a video that went viral. I'm sure majority would have seen it, to do with the fact that I think the guy is actually a street warden or a warden of some sort, and he's been sending messages to a minor. The child is actually 15 in the UK here. And what then happened was the fact that he had been sending messages. This was not even touching or anything, the child. So the father now took over her phone, where he was now responding to the I wouldn't want to, well, I'll say perpetrator for, want of a better description of the gentleman involved. So what now happened was that the father was actually responding, and then they actually set him up and went to the school gates, and they caught him there. So that's an entrapment. So I just want to find out whether there is a law of entrapment in Nigeria. I'll probably direct that back to the Director of Public Prosecutions. Please note that, because we really want to know that. And then there is an expression here. Everyone is, the Constitution is actually supposed to protect the right of everyone in Nigeria. How is the law applied to protect the rights of children who are predominantly victims of sexual abuse and that of the alleged perpetrator?
But again, that comes under, am I answering it or someone else?
Yes, you are answering it. You are answering
it. The law protecting children under the Child Rights Act is a special law, is a particular law to protect the rights of children. And it really is clear that abuse of children is either through sexual, through maltreatment, through abandonment, there are several sections that deals with issues of children and how to take care and protect the children. And of course, for you, that's why in most cases, some children, they have guardian ad litem, where if anybody can take their case up, if they found out that such children are being abused by even their parents. People, so the neighbors can go to the police or to the court to seek for them that the court should relieve them of that parenthood or that guardianship. And of course, the state will take over.
Right. I know there's a legal expression I'd like to quote. Everyone charged with a penal offense has the right to be presumed innocent until proved guilty, according to the law in a public trial, at which he or she has had all the guarantees necessary for his or her defense. As a constitutional lawyer, why is this statement difficult to apply in legal cases in Nigeria? Because I'm talking about the abuser and at the same time, the victim, who happens to be the minor.
It is about the way the law operates and the people act. Note my word. The way the law operates and the way people act. I've had a situation where a young girl was abused between 14 and 16, I guess.
Right.
She was raped by her neighbor.
Right.
And along the line, it became a police matter. Right. The police arrested the suspect, who is a 20-year-old young boy. And before you knew it, the parents indeed, they involved me as their lawyer, and we were in the police station preparing the child to go to court. And all of a sudden, the parents of the child that was abused now approached me, lawyer, we don't want to go to court. The parents of the child that was abused. Why? Because they said the other one has come to beg and so on and so forth, introducing sentiments. That is on one side. The second one is the principle of he who has served must prove, or anybody is assumed innocent until presumed innocent until found guilty. Right. But again, that cliche is a tall order when it comes to the courts, particularly the magistrate courts in Nigeria. Right. Because it is the police that prosecutes matters in the courts, particularly magistrate courts. And right. The police in most cases compromise matters. And the only way is that if the offense is so grievous that can be moved through the Office of Public Prosecution that will soon relay with, who will now move the matter to the High Court. Right. Or they will go to the magistrate court and tell the court that they are interested in the matter and that the state is ready to take it up. Because equally, I've done such a thing that when I found out that the matter was about to be compromised, I had to go to the Attorney General, who now directed the Office of the Public Prosecution to now go to court and now be interested, and we move the matter to the High Court. And that's what made us see the light of the day in that particular matter. But the other matter that I said, that the parents came to meet me, they just decided to settle out of court, and of course they compromised the matter and everybody went. So the non-important thing again is the police itself. In most cases, the police, who is the chief prosecutor, who is the IPO, must be in court. If the IPO is not around, there is no way you can forge ahead with the case, because he's the investigating police officer, IPO. And his input in the case is very germane, very, very important. So to that extent, that depending now on the complainant. And the complainant means the person who brought the matter, or who is the victim, or who is the parent of that person who has been abused. And it depends again on how deep his pocket is to prosecute it, because it's not easy. Then another thing, you can be sure if police want to do its work, that IPO will be transferred from maybe Lagos to maybe Port Harcourt, or from Kaduna to maybe Ibadan, so as to make his appearance in court very, very difficult. Or if the complainant wants to fund it, the ability to fund it itself will be humongous. Wow. So to that extent, really, it is a tall order. But that does not mean we don't get around it. We get around it if the state again, because there are some cases now that are coming up. I won't want to mention names. There are matters now that are coming up that are in the social media that the state itself has taken up. And of course, if the state takes up such matters, then definitely you can see that it will see the light of the day, because they will encourage the prosecutor, they will encourage the IPO, they will encourage the complainant, they will encourage the court, the whole system will be encouraged to see the light of the day.
Can I ask the question right there? Why will this particular case that you're talking about so important? Every case should have, should be, treated the same way. Irrespective of who you are in the society, you shouldn't just cherry pick that, okay, we're going to ensure that this case will follow it to a logical conclusion. Why is that the case? Why is there something wrong with the Constitution? Is there something wrong with the way these cases are being handled? Or is it because of...
No, it's about the system. The government can be everywhere. I'm happy the Director of Public Prosecution is on. I'm sure what they should do is that they should have some people who will be looking onto the social media, because there are many matters. Thank God for social media now. You agree with me? Thank God for social media now. Yeah. So because of social media, a whole lot of things are there. So government, particularly the states, the Ministry of Justice and the Office of Public Prosecution, should not pick and choose. Just as you said now, all matters must be treated on the same platform, on the same level. But you find out that they look at matters, there are some that we call it sensational matters. They are sensational case, or again, the second leg is that they are high-profile matters. Such high-profile matters, then of course, it attracts the attention of everyone, then the state will be involved. Like recently, a young boy was on social media who was talking to his mother, harassing his mother anywhere as it is. can't remember the word that he used. I can't remember now. It just ran off my brain. And of course, it caught the attention of the governor, and the governor called him, and it was celebrated. Whereas there are so many young children too who have, I mean, Sanwo-Olu, and there are so many children too who have been involved in such things, or even simpler or better ones, who have never been, who were on the social media but never caught the attention of the powers that be. But to now add on to what you have said, what I think is that there will be officers and men who will be on the social media managing matters like this, sexual abuse, taking advantage of children, and all of them will be given the same treatment. My sister, if such things are given the same treatment, irrespective of who, as you have stated, then it will reduce these problems that we have, because you can be sure that is on the increase, because many people do it and they get away with it. It is just a few. It is just a few that, of course, and it gets escalated. The one that is in Akwa Ibom, there is a big case in Akwa Ibom now. A young man called a girl the girl is looking for a job. He posted it on the social media that he has a job, and of course that led to the girl's death. Yes. It's just because she was lucky that she was chatting with her friend before the incident happened. If she did not chat with her friend, it should have just gone forever. Nobody will know how she ended. So all this time, because the other lady now put on it on the social media and and that's why there are so many of this type of a thing that occurs and happens all over the place.
We'll talk about the solutions later, because it would appear that the system is actually warped, and that's why some cases are being heard and others are just swept under the carpet. People introduce sentiments into it, and I have another question for you, which may lead on to what you've just said to me, though, because there seems to be a conflict of rights. Some may argue that in some parts of Nigeria there is a legitimate sexual abuse of minors, because some of them are as young as 13 or even 12, because you mentioned even 8, 9, 10, and the so-called husbands are actually adults who are probably, 20 or 30 years older than this minors. What's your view on this? Because we will call it legitimate abuse of minor in a way.
Yes, no doubt it's the culture of my people, my brothers in the north. It's the culture that they take as many wives as possible, and particularly marrying children. Marrying children or minors. That's one of the things they like, particularly the rich ones. And that's why you see one governor, I guess the former governor of Zamfara State, marrying a 13-year-old girl. And of course, anyone who has been to the northern part of the country, I hope one of our panelists will confirm that, or anybody who is chatting with us and watching this program will confirm that in the north, they have what they call vascular something. It has to do with destroying the vagina of the young girl. And of course, because you can imagine an adult, a full-grown adult, penetrating a small girl, and of course, sometimes without pity, and of course, on a regular basis. So that definitely will bring pain and disorder, and will even lead to death or illness or so. So it is a culture, and of course, as far as it's concerned, and to all intents and purposes, I'm a lawyer, I practice law, and I practice in the north. And sometimes I go to the courts in the north too, and I know that the law operates more in civil matters and maybe few criminal matters. But in that issue, anyone who wants to promote it will be a tall order, because it is rooted in the culture that they must have young wives if they want to. So trying to abolish it will not, I don't think it goes. So it's one of the things that they do there. But the only thing I will promote and I encourage is that I hope they are listening to, watching this program up north. There are some NGOs then who can just take this thing up as an advocacy issue so that this thing stops. If it stops, it is better for humanity.
Okay, so that's one of the solutions to the problem, which we're going to talk about in depth later on. Now, let's go to the other cap you're wearing. As a pastor, how would you deal with a case of sexual abuse of a minor, which, say, for example, involves a member of your church, maybe your assistant pastor, and you hear that he's been molesting a child in your church? Are you just going to say, well, let's read Psalm 24 and we pray and fast for about 7 days and that will be the end of it? Are you going to go for such a situation?
First and foremost, I'm a lawyer before a pastor. I'm a father. And obviously, you see in the civil rights and the human rights community, we have this cliche that an abuse on one or attack on one is an attack on all. So I have a daughter. So what gives me the idea that if I let this man go without being punished, he will not pounce on my daughter or his co-accomplice who is somewhere watching that, okay, it doesn't matter if I pounce on the daughter of a pastor, it will be prayer too that you let us pray. So where am I going is that I will allow the full weight of the law, take it up. This is not crime against the church. This is crime against humanity. And just as you introduced me the other time, I wear two caps. And my humanity comes first because a minor has been abused. The pastor or the assistant pastor, or even any member of my church who does that, knows that it's a simple thing. We all know that this is not the right thing to do. So doing it, definitely, you know the consequences. Like I was telling some of my people 2 days ago, that for every action, there is a reaction. So if you know, before you take any action or take any step, you weigh the consequences. So what are the consequences of my taking this step? So before anything is done, definitely the person should weigh the consequences. The other matter that I told you about the parents now coming to compromise it was because I have no power over it. I'm just a lawyer invited to see how I can undertake the matter. I'm a sympathetic or even unsympathetic undertaker in this matter. Yeah. But for my pastor or for my member, I have power over it. Obviously, either they leave the church or they do not leave the church. In as much as the event happened while I was still in control, where I was still I'm still their pastor, they are still my members, I have total control until we see it to the end. So, fairness, I've had situations where a pastor has this type of a situation. In fact, it's as if maybe you knew about it, but it is not me, it is a pastor whose assistant was busy molesting his own daughter.
Wow.
Along the line, of course, they got to know, and they now took it to the pastor, who is the senior. The pastor said, the issue, the scenario you painted, let us pray and let us let it go. Let it go, because when eventually we moved it further against the junior pastor, he had the ecclesia against the pastor or the pastor. So it's a question of, I rub my back, you rub my back. I won't take a step against you in this regard. Then, obviously, you two will not take step against me in this regard. Whereas the issue is that a minor, and that issue will affect the psyche of this little girl forever.
Yes.
Forever. Mm-hmm. So, you see, if you are on right, you're on your right path, you can be able to speak against injustice and inanities. It is when you are compromised that you now bring statements in. And that's why whenever you see people talk and they are instead of talking straight, in most cases, that's when you invite them to wade into an issue. Then you know that definitely in most cases they are begging the issue.
Okay, so finally, what are the safeguarding measures you have in place for the children attending your church?
Well, you see, it is only God that can protect. Before they come to church, they are in the custody of their parents. When they are in church, we have a children's section. And we allow it that we have a teacher anyway. Generally, we have a teacher who engages the boys and the girls together. And the only thing is that my wife once in a while goes round. She will just leave the service because the children's section is a little bit far away. But for the children, for the toddlers and the minors that you talked about, all those ones are by women, by our sisters in the church. But for those who are adolescents between age 15 and above to 18 and so, we have a mixture of a class by a female, a class by a male. So, of course, during the church period, it is deemed that all of them will be in the church. If one wants to go to pee or wee, he goes there and all. But again, after service, no doubt, it is deemed that they will all be under, again, the care of their parents to take them home. Not that the pastor will now begin to lead them home one by one. But again, the issue is that announcements are made, information are given about child abuse, and of course, we again tell them the implication of, and of course, me as a lawyer equally and as a pastor, I let them know the implication of child abuse. And again, even living a moral, upright life, that's what we do. Because again, we just refer them to the Bible in the book of Joshua, that if you teach your child the right way to go. And if you grow up, you will not depart from it. Things like that. So we keep on telling them things so as to make them live a honorable life. And so far, there has not been any such untoward activity report in my parish.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for
sharing. Meanwhile, my church is the Redeemed Christian Church of God. So it's not as if I'm all in all. With, of course, we are working with the church, that's the Redeemed Christian Church of God, works in parishes and parishes. So I am in charge of one of the parishes.
All right, and thank you very much for shedding light on the way you handle things in your church, and we hope everything continues to go well in there. I'm going to take two of your questions and I'll throw it back to the DPP in due course because we really want to get to the bottom of that. Thank you so much. Our next panelist is actually a seasoned police officer with 29 years experience, which includes investigation, operations, and community policing. He has held various positions as area commander in Ota, Ogun State, Ikole Ekiti, Ekiti State, and he was once assistant commissioner of Special Inquiry Bureau, Force Criminal Investigation Department Annex in Lagos, where he once worked, and also area commander in Ayotoro, Ogun State. His diverse roles has included dealing with cultism-related crimes in various parts of Kano and Lagos states. He has been involved in several police reform efforts, which included youth and school outreach programs. He is currently the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Zone 16 in Yenagua in Bayelsa State, Nigeria. Welcome, Detective Commissioner of Police, Monday Agbonika. I hope he hasn't fallen off. DCP Agbonika, can you hear us? DCP Agbonika, we can't hear you.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Right.
I'm actually having a problem with my connection.
Okay, we're going to be quick then. How does the police conduct its investigation in the sexual abuse of minors?
Well, that's a big one. The actually in the police we have the juvenile welfare section. That juvenile welfare section is supposed to exist in all police stations. Right. That is the lower stations, that's the divisions, because they are the ones that actually give services to the communities directly. Right. But you see, recently, the juvenile welfare centers are supposed to handle cases that involve minors, cases right. of sexual abuse, cases of abandoned children, cases of child abuse, like when the parents are not properly taking care of them, they're not going to school and stuff like that, and abandonment and other things. Then, of course, we also have cases of juvenile offenders, which the section handles and so on. But recently, we discovered that it was not enough to insist that they handle only those kinds of cases. So we now started upgrading the juvenile welfare centers in police stations. And now we have what they call the family support units. As I'm speaking now, we have family support units in some divisions. Some states are already having, like Lagos, they have about 11 family support units.
Where I'm actually going, DCP Agbonika, is that how do you conduct investigation where a minor is involved? Do you have psychologists there, trained psychologists? Do you provide an enabling environment for the individual, that is the young child, to be able to speak about the traumatic experience? I just want to focus on the abused victim.
Okay, I was just trying to give you a background so that you understand how we investigate these cases. But right. I could take you there. Maybe if there are questions later, maybe I'll come back. Now, a child, when
oh dear, I think he's having problem with his network.
When a child is abused and the matter comes before the, when a child is abused and the matter is reported before the police, am I still on? Okay. The major concern is the issue of confidentiality, and we need to assure the child, of course. And then if, because of the trauma, there's need to make contact with other agencies like psychologists, like you mentioned, welfare officers. And then when it comes to interview, because of the family support unit movement, the police officers are given additional training and they can interview children very well now. So in interview of children, we try to ensure that we record it on video, and we try to ensure that when we are recording the statements of children that are abused victims, we use the language of the child. So if the child says my pee or my wee, we write it like that. And we also have anatomical dolls, which are dolls that have the body parts of a child. So we have the male doll and the female doll. So if the child is making reference to any of those parts of the body, like the penis, the vagina, and so on, we'll make the child to touch it, and while it is being recorded on video. Because when the matter gets to court, we need to establish that the child actually knew what he was saying and was not tutored to go and say these things. And the child can sometimes get confused under cross-examination and other things. So then, of course, the issue of confidentiality, the staff are also trained to ensure that information that comes before the station is confidential. And one of the ways we do it is we ensure that if someone comes into the station to report a case of sexual abuse, that the person should not be telling the story all along the line, because before you get into the station, you are expected to say why you are going in there. And by the time the story starts flying around, you will not be able to check it again. And also when we are dealing with the press, we ensure that you give only information that they need to handle. And of course, the press will understand what not to use because of this issue of confidentiality. Because many people, many parents will not want a case, will not want to report, because they feel if they report the case, it will become public notice, and it's going to be bad for their family name and also the child image and so on. And so if we give them this assurance of confidentiality, many more people might want to speak out and report cases. So when we ensure that the matter gets to, because a case of like sexual abuse, if a minor, we call it defilement, and a case of defilement, if we are using the Violence Against Persons Prohibition law, the punishment for defilement is life imprisonment, and it's a very serious matter. So immediately we have put together our investigations. We ensure that the case is transferred to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. And those days, we used to go to magistrate court and file a charge and then waiting for the advice. But now we go directly, our lawyers in the police go directly to the high courts and file their charges while awaiting the DPP advice. If DPP advise that there's a case, they just take over the investigation, and the justice is served better that way. And of course, we try to use some scientific aids also, because it's been helping, like the forensic labs, wherever we can get scientific evidence, we try to pick up trace elements and so on. It has been helping in investigation of cases, because when you assert that someone has committed an offense, there's need for corroboration. And of course, you must prove this beyond reasonable doubt before it can fly through in the court of law.
Thank you very much for that. Quite thorough. So more or less, you're saying that there is thorough investigation. One thing I just wanted to find out is that apart from the techniques that you use for these minors, where you have a case which involves a high-profile individual, do you find it very difficult to conduct your investigation?
Well, I really don't see difficult. Of course, it's challenging. It's a very big challenge. Interference is a big challenge. But I have had such situations, and I find that if you have your facts very well, then of course you'll be able to pass through whatever interference comes in. Right. And by the time you are able to show them that you have enough facts to prove that at least to have a prima facie case to present in court that this child has been abused. For instance, you have a medical evidence that has shown that the child has actually been abused. Right. That is proven. Then, of course, the child says, this is the person that abused me. Then it will now be left with who abused the child. Because the perpetrator might be saying, no, I'm not the one. Fine, the child was abused, but who abused the child? Then at least we have something to go by. So when you have such interferences and you're able to present these facts, you find that it will be easier. And one of the approaches I use in practice is I work with the office of the Ministry of Justice, the Director of Public Prosecutions, or the Attorney General. If you are working hand in hand with them, you let them know, these are the facts, this is the case I have, this is the challenge, this person is related to this person, or this is the kind of pressure I'm having. And you find it's easy. They will tell you, okay, don't worry, we know what to do about it, and so on. And when all of us are working on it like that, even with the civil society organizations and so on, you find that you're able to cope very well with these interferences.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have safe houses where you place minors in order to protect them from maybe intimidation or further abuse or harassment?
Okay, that's also another challenge. But you see, because we have discovered the juvenile welfare centers don't have a facility to keep a child for a short time. The family support units that are coming up now have a small place where a child can be kept, but for a short time. I think we can keep a child for about 3 days before we get to the Ministry of Social Development or Ministry of Women Affairs or whatever it is, depending on which state. And then we cannot get a better place to keep the child. Then, of course, because you find that when a child is abused, sometimes the child might be abused by a relation, maybe the father or even an uncle and so on. We can't allow that child to go back to the source of abuse. So when we have situations like that, we should be able to keep the child for just a few days. Then liaise with the Ministry of Women Affairs or Social Development, the welfare departments, and they are able to get the child to another government approved place where a child can be kept. And of course, sometimes the parents of the child can be under a lot of pressure. When they say that they contribute to interference, they come and say they don't want case. Sometimes they're under pressure because they are threatening their lives and so on. And if they are not given protection or assurance of their safety, you'll find that they will not be able to go all out for the case and stand through the process of prosecution. So what we try to do is we try to liaise with other agencies. There was a case in Lagos where the mother of the child that was abused was under serious threat. And when the state government took over, came into the matter, and they relocated the woman, got her another apartment somewhere safe, and had police to guard her. And the woman's confidence came back, and they were able to complete that trial. And the perpetrator was sentenced to 25 years imprisonment in Lagos State. So these are victim support issues that we try to come in. Sometimes you need to also think about transportation, how the parents or the guardian can go to court and come back. And if a family member is involved, you have to be able to secure the wife, the woman, or the mother of the child. Otherwise, she will be under threat from the family, and it will be difficult to carry on with the case.
Okay. I have one last question here for you. In fact, too, the police, on social media, we see a lot going on, and it's so disheartening. But the thing is, are people read their rights or informed of their rights at the police station? Because you find out that there is a pending case, and people are talking about it willy-nilly on social media, and it could even be the alleged perpetrator that's been released on bail. Do you advise them on what to do?
Yes, people are advised on what to do. But the best thing to do in protecting information flow is to ensure that the person who is not entitled to an information does not come in, does not have access to that information. That is the best thing. And that is why at police station, the family support units now, we set up a stage in which it is difficult. I mean, if you want to interview a victim, the victim should be interviewed in privacy. So no one else comes in and gets information. And if you are recording an interview of victims, it's not everybody that should have access to this recording. So there are systems put in place to ensure that not everybody can handle this information. People from outside will not have access to. So if you do that, then you are able to manage how information is handled. But there's a level because, for instance, we know that the names of victims should not be published in the media. And but sometimes when you charge a case to court, you have to state the name of the victim and the name of the suspects. You can't just say social person or X or something. And the charge in court, in the public document, anybody can go to court and get it. And sometimes, so these informations are available in so many places. So we just have to ensure that there's enough advocacy, enough information around for people to be responsible enough to know how to handle information and how to treat it.
It's very interesting you mentioned something there. So for a minor, say Anne, right? That's the name of the minor. So you put the minor's name on the actual documents. You don't protect the child. You don't use a pseudonym or anything.
No, on the case file, you have to use the name on the case file. And when you are charging the case to court, you have to put the name in the charge. So, but in the police station, we try to protect, the family support units have an index card they use now, so that if a victim comes to the station, she has a code, a card, a small card. And when you look at the card, you know who the IPO is. Then the IPO has a list where the names of her victims are stated with the codes, so that the IPO will only know who the victim's name is after going through the list.
Okay.
So, and the person that keeps it is the officer in charge of the center. But these systems can still be hacked into. These systems, you can still have issues. So the most important thing is we must all be responsible and know what informations and how to treat informations. You can find in some social media platforms some groups that are supposed to be groups that are advocacy groups against sexual and gender-based violence. They will be posting information that they shouldn't be posting. They post nude pictures of a victim and stuff like that before someone will come in and say, no, this picture is not appropriate here, we should take it off. And by then, the thing is already out there. And anybody who wants to use it, in the wrong way, we use it. So we just need to know how to manage this information.
Okay, let me just quickly throw one in for you. I've been complaining about something, and it's actually to do with a childminder who has been molesting a child. But you don't have, I've been coming to the station, but I haven't been able to provide you with evidence because you wouldn't investigate unless you had evidence of it. And then the next thing I did was that I set up a camera, CCTV and everything else. And I brought it to the station that this is it, just to trap the person. I'm supposed to be staying at home, but then I changed my plans and I decided that the childminder should actually come in and obviously with the intention of trapping that person and using that as evidence against them. And if I brought it to you at the station, would you accept it?
Yes, but I heard you asking that question when you were talking about entrapment.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. We call it agent provocateur. The lawyers that are here will tell you. When you set up someone so that the person can commit an offense, you are giving the person an opportunity to. You will have a defense.
Right.
Yes, you have a defense that this thing was set up, and it is not fair because it is a dangerous thing to do. Right. It's if an offense has been committed and you have evidence, let's investigate it. But for you to set up someone, it's very difficult for you to prove that person has intention, because when you are trying to establish a case, the lawyers that are there will support. If you want to, before you can prove a crime, you must be able to prove that the person has intention to commit the crime. And then also the person also did one or two things to carry out the evidence. But when you assisted, you help the person to commit the crime. You help him to form the intention. You understand? It's you spoil it. So with a good lawyer, you have a lot of problems in the case. And in any case, you are endangering that person, that child, to set the person up. What if the minor, what if the person actually succeeds, overpowers everybody, and now actually defies the child? To what purpose? Just because you want the person to be prosecuted, you have endangered the child's life. So it is a normal practice that for you, instead of you endangering the life of one innocent person, it is better you allow 10 to escape. So if it means him escaping rather than endangering another person's life, it's better let them go. So let us just move with evidence that we have and so on. But it's good for us to know people that have tendencies to commit, like pedophiles. Of course, I'm not a psychologist, and we're not talking about whether they are pedophiles, they are the case level pedophiles or so on. For a police officer, it is good for us to know that this person has a tendency to commit offenses like this. And if you know that, you can keep a watch on him, and you advise people not to allow him to get too much contact with minors. For instance, in schools, when it comes to employment of someone to be maybe a staff in a school of little girls, or maybe even a guard and so on, this can help. But in talking about sexual offenses register, the law insists that the person must be a convict, must first be convicted. But for police officers, we keep information. There's nothing wrong in having data on somebody, so you can watch the person and so on. So you're not taking unawares. It's just being proactive.
All right. My last question: when do you refer cases to the prosecutor? What kind of cases would you refer to the prosecutor?
To the prosecutor. All cases that we find that we have prima facie case, that an offense has been committed, whatever offense, the case goes for prosecution. But except you are talking about the Department of Public Prosecution, DPP.
Right.
For the DPP, we only refer serious cases. Cases that we expect the state to prosecute. Cases that are normally state versus, not Commissioner of Police versus. So such cases like murder, manslaughter, rape, armed robbery, and so on. Okay. In such cases will definitely end up with Department for Public Prosecution.
Thank you so much, DCP Agbonika, for such illuminating contributions. Our next panelist is a seasoned and an internationally certified mediator from CDR UK, Chartered Mediator at the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators in Abuja, and also a member of the panel of neutrals at the Lagos State Multi-Door Courthouse. She has more than 20 years experience in criminal litigation, having served as a prosecutor and a public defense counsel. She has worked closely with both children in conflict with the law and in contact with the law. She trained as human rights field worker in the National University of Ireland and advanced training in criminal defense and trial advocacy from the Continued Legal Education Program of National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, as well as National Institute of Trial Advocacy in the United States of America. She's an advocate for restorative justice in the administration of criminal justice in Lagos State. She's currently the public prosecutor in the Directorate of Public Prosecutions in Lagos State Ministry of Justice. Welcome, Messrs. Yinka Adeyemi.
Good evening, everyone. My pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, good evening. You've heard what we've been talking about. What does it mean to be a public prosecutor? Let me just quickly create that awareness so that some of us who do not have an idea would know.
Okay. So the public prosecutor is the one that prosecutes all cases, all criminal cases in Lagos State. For instance, in Lagos State, the schedule of duty is to see that all cases, all criminal cases are prosecuted after being investigated by the police. So they also do some other things like looking through the files that the police will have brought and see where there is prima facie. When I say whether there is prima facie, I say whether there is probable cause for any case to be prosecuted. So basically, that is the job of the prosecutor.
Okay, thank you for that. In a place like Nigeria, where societal status is very important, is anyone above the law?
Certainly, absolutely not. Nobody is above the law. Nobody is above the law. The Constitution is very, very clear on that.
Okay. So in the papers, we've been hearing series of complaints about the judiciary in terms of prosecutions involving minors, that there is no fair hearing or trial. For example, now, you are all on strike. How are cases managed during this period?
Okay, so what we have been doing, first and foremost, I want to debunk the allegation that the minors do not get fair hearing, because we have a lot of, things and programs on ground to ensure that minor gets fair hearing. For instance, within the DPP, within the Directorates of Public Prosecutions, we have a special unit, the Sexual Offenders Unit, and it takes also care of the children and minors as well. And this unit is specifically to prosecute sexual offenders against minors, women, and gender-based, generally gender-based crimes, gender-based offenses, and these are also prosecuted in special courts. This set of prosecutors are also trained. We also have protocol on how to deal with children and prosecuting children. So the whole lot is to ensure that children get the best advocates when it comes to criminal cases against them. So it is not true that they do not have fair hearing.
Okay. On the other side of
all
the spectrum,
things are put on ground to ensure that they do.
Okay. On the other side of the spectrum, what about the alleged abusers or perpetrators? It's also been reported that they haven't been given fair hearing.
I'm not sure whether I understand that. Whether the
other side of the
perpetrator has not been given.
I just mentioned about
whether they have
what about the abuse?
Yes, yeah, they have not been given special fair hearing. That would not be right, because there are procedures in prosecuting any case. Okay, there are procedures in prosecuting. So, and there are also different methods. For instance, if a case is ongoing and there are other options, even for the defendants, that honestly, if one will also look at it, we will say, why would we want to do this? We have an option of plea bargaining, where the defendant can plead to a lesser offense just to get off the hook of the very serious one. So the defendant cannot even say that they do not get fair hearing. And of course, the courts are there for them. So when they do not even have counsel, the courts usually refer them to special, lawyers like the Office of the Public Defender or legal aid to take up their defenses. So it's only when they do not have lawyers that we can say a defendant will not have fair hearing, because that it will mean that that defendant will not be represented by a counsel. But there are programs on ground to ensure that even though you have committed this offense, you will also be treated properly, because the Constitution says you have to be treated properly.
What's the, for example, I know what it is in the UK here, when you keep somebody in detention for a while, what is the minimum, or should I say maximum actually, of duration that you actually, somebody can be kept in detention?
Well, under the Constitution is very clear. Under the Constitution, you must take a person to court and such person within 3 months, depending on the type of offense. But where the offense is very, very serious and needs to be investigated or needs special prosecution, it can take more than that. So
really?
yes. So the bottom line is actually what is the period within which you get conviction, and one of the reasons why sometimes you have long adjournments and long, prosecution in any case is probably because there are no witnesses. And that's the greatest challenge as a prosecutor here in Lagos, I must tell you. And you know that without witnesses, there is no case. So most times what we find is that people, the citizenry, feel that all they need to do is just to, report about a case, and that is the end of it, rather seeing it to the end. So sometimes we have challenges in getting these witnesses to come and give evidence. And because we are so sure and we believe in the case that we are handling, we will not let go of any case. And of course, that will cause some sort of delay. So one of the things that we have been doing here in the DPP's office is to start an outreach into the community to tell them the importance of witnesses and to come out and speak and also give evidence, because without witness, there's no justice. We might be talking about justice delay, but I tell you, a lot of time the delay is from people developing cold feet to come and give evidence.
Okay. All right. Thank you. There is a domestic violence and response team in Lagos State. How effective is this agency?
Yeah.
And does the work include, sexual abuse of minors or just adults? Because they've been on before. We had representatives.
Okay. So it's generally for minors, children, women, and persons with disability. And it's very, very effective. It's a household name in Lagos State, if you ask me. And their work, transcend beyond or just, getting people or sensitizing, but also to ensure that the victim, gets psychosocial support. The victim sometimes even if it is found out that the victim is poor, maybe from poor background, such person can, there's a fund that is given to that type of situation where the victim will be empowered. So it's not just assisting victims, but also making sure that the victim is properly taken care of within this community.
Okay. Why do you think there is sudden high rate of incidents of sexual abuse of minors? Is that not an indication that you are not really, or should I say that the courts are not giving the appropriate custodial sentences? They're not stiff enough to serve as deterrent?
Okay, so for sexual offense against a child, if it's defilement or penetration or sexual assault by penetration, those are the very serious offenses. They carry life imprisonment. And we have data to show that most of these people have been committed for this penalty. I think one of the reasons why we have a rise in the report, I'll say reports of sexual offenses, it has always been there. Don't forget, I was a public defender, and I know the work that the public defender and some other NGOs did, in the early 2000s, when there was the outreach to the community to speak up. So people are now coming up, and in fact, it's a plus. I would say it's a plus because people now have confidence in the system, that the system will take this up, and so they are ready to talk. Because what we used to have was silence. Culture of silence, where people will not come out. So people are gradually coming up to talk about this issue, to report, and to stand by what they have said. So even though it's not still enough, how we want it to be, but at least they are coming up, and that's why you see a lot of these reports. And also, the social media has done a lot in helping to expose this, menace. So it will look as if, yes, it's increasing, but it has always been there. It has always been there, and the people are now coming up, talk about it, and have confidence that something will be done.
Yes. Do you have any statistics for the number of sexual abuse of minors with successful prosecutions?
Yes. In fact, we have profile. We have from 2018 to March. We have profiled 1,727 cases, persons, who have been going through trial and, of course, conviction. So for between 2019 till date, we have successfully gotten 87 convictions. We're still going through some other, cases. They're still ongoing, and we know that at the end of the day, we will see some success in it.
Okay. Now, in a sexual assault case, how is the minor protected from intimidation? Because we see it regularly on social media, people being paraded publicly. When the case is transferred to you, how do you ensure that the identity of the minor is protected?
Okay, one of the things that we always do is have regular conversation with the press, regular conversation with the police, so that some of these things that we see on the social media are not, we know that it's not normal, but once a case gets to our own end, we ensure that the victim is well protected. We have what we call the witness support unit, who gets across to the victim, and depending on the age and, of course, the temperament of the victim. If the victim does not want to face the crowd, we ensure that when the case is about to be called, nobody is in the court. Only the defendants, only the lawyers and the prosecutors. So we ensure that it is not open to the public. And if by any chance that the child still feels intimidated looking at the defendant, we also employ what we call screening, so that we will put some screen where the child will not see the defendant directly, but you will hear and you will be able to talk. So those are the things that we also have on ground. And of course, we assure the defendant, the victim, calm the victim down, assure them of our support throughout the case.
Okay, thanks. I have one question. No, let me actually go back to what I asked the constitutional lawyer before, and also because your background is also criminal law. If I were to present to you evidence of a video recording as an entrapment, would that be admissible?
Well, it depends on what you are presenting. For instance, I know that entrapment is where you induce a person who would ordinarily not commit an offense to commit that particular offense. But where that person has been committing that offense, it doesn't need any inducement or anything. So all you want to do is to catch that person right in the act. So that's very legal, and that is acceptable, by us. But where you need induce, because under the Evidence Act, you cannot even do that. So that may have some issue when you want to tender the evidence. But in a situation where you're not inducing, you just want that person to be caught right at the act, that person will ordinarily do it, because entrapment would be that that person ordinarily will not do what you are asking that needs to do. But in a situation where that person will ordinarily do it, it's accepted under the law.
The other time we had a police officer here, and I know that there is a sex offenders register in Ekiti State. Do you have one in Lagos State? And how long, if you do, how long can an offender's name remain on the register?
Okay, so we have a sex offender register in Lagos State as well. And in fact, Lagos State started the whole thing, you know, in 2014. So where we had, you know, executive order establishing this register. But what we have, the way we have it in Lagos State is register, where we have in the registry the profile of all the cases we have dealt with, the ongoing ones and the convicted ones. For the convicted one, you have the profile, the name, the address, and all that. So it will be there perpetually, except where the case is upturned at the Supreme Court. So that's the only time, or any of the last strata of a court that the person has gone to, and that's the only time that the name will be removed from the register. So it's always there. But it's not because there's no law backing it. We're still going through the law. The law is presented now before the House of Assembly to legislate specifically on that. So it's not published, you know, in the public domain. But anybody who wants to have access to the register can apply to the Honorable Attorney General. That can be done.
So you said perpetually. So somebody's an abuser, the person's been convicted, maybe say, for example, 10 years, served the term. So that person's name will be there forever. That's what you're basically saying, unless of course they appealed against it. Unless
he appealed against it. Or any other, or any other, you know, reason. Probably that person has gone through some sort of therapy and all that, you know, to have a change, but it's usually there.
Is this just for Lagos State or everywhere in Nigeria?
No, it's just for Lagos State.
Just for Lagos State. Thank you so much for shedding light on what you do as a public prosecutor. We truly appreciate your contributions. Now, let me move on to the counselors. What we're trying to find out the psychological impact of this heinous crime committed by an adult to a minor. What's the impact? And at the same time, we're trying to find out, we had the psychiatrist talk about the fact that it's probably an illness. So we have a counselor here, and she's also a psychotherapist. She's going to tell us about what kind of treatments they offer. Is it for the pedophile, if that person is a convicted pedophile, or the abuser? So we want to sort of like interchange, because we are supposed to have a social worker here, so we'll be going sort of like interchanging the questions to find out exactly how to protect the child, and at the same time the kind of counseling the minor will be receiving, as well as the perpetrator. So the next person I will call on is a counselor, and she's also a psychotherapist and registered childcare practitioner. She's a member of the British Association of Counseling and Psychotherapy. Also, she's the Vice President, Inclusive Social Welfare and Empowerment Foundation. She has 16 years of working experience with adults with learning disability and mental health issues within health and social care. Part of our work involves adopting different strategies or techniques to support an individual to explore their feelings in order to enhance their well-being. Welcome, Mrs. Ronke Adeyemi.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. So let's even start. What do you think might be the triggers for such an appalling behavior in some of these perpetrators?
Thank you. There's no specific reasons as to why a perpetrator is a perpetrator. And it could be from environmental factors. It could be from the fact that they themselves have been abused. And it could be from the fact, most things stem from the childhood. Right. But before perpetrator could come out to say the perpetrator, they need changes. They must have been aware of the kind of behavior they're having and know the impact of it on their victims. So for such people, if they come into counseling, you support them with empathy, because you will know, I will know that they're really genuine, right? Yeah, and wanting to change. So that is where we start from, facilitating forgiveness for themselves, and then moving forward. Some may they may come to time of going back to their victim to apologize. Mm-hmm. So which means they want to change. So we will support them accordingly.
Okay. Would you be able to help us here? From the victim's perspective, what do you think will be the psychological indicators of sexual abuse?
It is the victim.
Yes, from the victim's perspective.
Yes, there are lots of things. There are a lot of symptoms. You will see the symptoms. They will have, if it's minor may not even know what to feel, especially if it's coming from the attachment background. If it's coming from their family or relation, a trusted person. So they don't know what to feel, because this I will say this, I don't even know what to call it. It masquerades itself as affection, as love, as protection. So children may not know what to feel. However, it waits till later stage.
Right.
Yeah, but as a child, there will still be this cognition process of what is going on, which will impact the learning. It will impact the ability to function well. Then it could manifest itself in this, eating disorder. It could manifest itself in physical symptoms like pain in the leg, or, I've worked with somebody that is complaining of pain, muscle pain in the leg. And that disturbed him from going to school regularly.
Mm-hmm. Because I was, during my research, I actually checked what the WHO said, the World Health Organization. Some of the behavioral indicators, which you have already said, like eating disorders, even social problems, because they become very withdrawn, depression, poor self-esteem. And then you have the blame game that maybe it's my fault. And then on the other side is when you talk about the physical indicators, WHO actually says pain on urination. And then at times, if, for example, a boy has been sodomized, there was a time we saw it on Facebook where a lady, whether it was the mother or, well, the guardian in any case, talking about this, that the poor boy had been sodomized. So you have things like that. And vaginal or penile discharge, anal complaints, urinary tract infection, even pregnancy. There is this one that I found very disturbing, the presence of sperm. There was this old man of probably 50-something years of age who was caught in a state outside Lagos, and he was actually molesting a young child of 7. They actually showed it on Facebook. The presence of the sperm, they showed it to, it was really, really disheartening to see. And when they asked the man, why did you do it? And he was pleading, just forgive me. Forgive you for what? So I would really agree with what the psychiatrist said, that it's probably an illness. Meanwhile, the man is married. He's got his own children, but then he has preference for a child of about 7 years of age. And then there was another one, the child was probably about 8, bloodstained dress, and she was already pregnant. I mean, this thing is appalling, that we really need to find a way of tackling this issue, which is increasing at an alarming rate. So my other question to you is, you said there are times when, during psychotherapy, the person can ask for forgiveness and all the rest of it. So as a psychotherapist, would you at some point in time be thinking maybe you should report this individual to the law enforcement agency? Or when do you cross that boundary? I know that you have to maintain the patient and
Yes.
psychotherapy confidentiality. When do you now cross that boundary and say, no, I have to report this because this person is bound to continue this appalling behavior?
Okay, it's two ways. If it's a child that is being presented, or the child that was sent for counseling or come for the psychotherapeutic intervention, the child, we have the obligation to report.
Right.
So confidentiality will be breached at that level.
Yes.
However, now referring to myself and the way we were trained, we will make the child knows that anything we're going to talk about will remain between us, to allow the child to be able to express themselves freely, so that the issue of trust can be built among both of us, among us. However, we won't let that little child knows that in a way to protect you, to safeguard you, to protect your future. If anything comes up from our discussion, but I will tell you first, but I will report. So the child will feel, he or she will feel having control over the therapy.
Right.
Well, if it's from the perpetrator's perspective now, coming into therapy, confidentiality is quite important. Because coming to therapy is for them to, they want sort of healing.
Right.
And they want sort of empathy. And they want somebody to understand them, be present with them. Right. So, and confidentiality is quite important, very paramount to them. So if they are not doing it, because if they're still doing it, they won't come. They won't come by themselves. Maybe somebody else will have pushed them to come, maybe judge or from the court. So that you break the confidentiality. But if it's self-reported action, then we work with them. That's where confidentiality is quite paramount. We will not break the confidentiality.
Okay. What kind of strategies on the other side of the spectrum again, what type of strategies can you actually adopt for someone considered to be a child molester or a pedophile?
Yeah, as you may know, I'm an integrative therapist, which means I work with two buckets of approaches. That's ranging from psychodynamic, where is this coming from? How did you, when and how do you get into this? Then we explore that. Then we can, depending on, I will work with the client on basis of what can work for the client with the client. Then from there to person center, just be there. Be there with the client, go with whatever he or she wants to go with, then facilitate healing, forgiveness, shame, guilt, all those feelings that they're presenting, that is attached to their behavior. Okay. Then CBT, you work with their cognition, which is what I uses here in England. How can you change this perception? So what is it? What is a trigger? How can you deal with the trigger? Then again, mindfulness.
What if it's a chemical imbalance? How do you deal with that?
That's where, because we will have the medical history, we will have the GP, and we don't work in isolation. All right. So there will be, if it's something that this needs what's it called? Psychiatric doctor's intervention. Yes. We send the person to the GP.
Okay. All right then. Thank you so much for your contribution. We now have Mr. Jide Lanley back with us. He's a solicitor and barrister, Supreme Court of Nigeria, and also barrister at the Inner Temple here in the United Kingdom. Mr. Jide Lanley is a very experienced dual qualified barrister who has a mixed practice both in the UK and Nigeria, combining alternative dispute resolution with criminal law. In the UK, Mr. Lanley has appeared in the last 2 decades in several cases involving rape and historical sexual offenses where the victims have been women and children, both male and female. Is especially qualified and experienced in the cross-examination of vulnerable witnesses in sexual offenses. He is eminently qualified to discuss elements of the offense of rape in whatever context, including marital rape and the sentencing regime in England and Wales. Welcome, Mr. Lanley.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you.
You practice both in Nigeria and in the UK. Who is classified as a minor? I'm looking for the age now because we have a challenge with what we heard earlier. Who is classified as a minor?
Well, there are in the United Kingdom, in most of the countries in the United Kingdom, I practice in England and Wales.
Right.
In terms of sexual offenses,
right.
The age of consent is 16.
Right.
And that's the same across the countries such as Scotland, Northern Ireland, and in Wales.
Right.
In Nigeria, there is some, I say, conflicts of law, and the constitutional lawyer will be able to explain that, because in reality, when one looks at the sexual or the offense of rape as it's defined in the states, because each state has their own law, and then you've got the national law.
Right.
The age appears to be 18. Insofar as if you look at the laws of Lagos, the age of consent seems to be 18. However, when you go to other states, where the state laws allow younger, what I term younger children, to marry.
Yeah.
And in some states in the north, from the age of 13.
Right.
So that's where all the, I say, conflicts, it seems to be appearing. The Constitution itself, which is the overall law, body of law, is silent insofar as, and that may be deliberate, because when in other states where younger ages are allowed to marry, that presupposes that they're old enough for intercourse.
Right.
So that's where maybe the conversation there might be some conflicts in what you've heard previously. But in England and Wales and all the countries in the United Kingdom, the age of consent is 16.
Okay. Now let's quickly run through the terms, because we are now pushed for time. What actually is sexual abuse?
Sexual abuse, I mean, that's a colloquial term.
Right.
It could be anything from you could be discussing rape, which involves any penetration of the woman mouth, anus, or vaginal rape. And then you've got penetration, which doesn't necessarily have to be with the penis. It could be a finger, and it could be with an object.
Right.
So all those things which previously people would say, oh, but I only put my finger, as they would say. Well, you've penetrated, it's an assault. The person, and if the person doesn't consent, then there you are. And it doesn't matter whether you're married to the person or not. Many years ago, you sign a contract of marriage and that means anything. Not anymore. And I think people are beginning to understand you don't sign up for whenever, anytime, and whenever I feel like. You still have to consent. If there's no consent, then that person could be brought to court, and many husbands have been brought to court and sometimes convicted for rape, even in the marital context.
And that's the UK, obviously. In Nigeria, I think
Yes.
it's a totally different thing because of our culture. Yeah?
Yes, but the because of culture, but at the same time, the position is changing.
Right.
The advent of social media is becoming a kind of place where people are being exposed to the extent that people no longer condone it. I'm not saying it's at the same level as it is in the United Kingdom, but it's getting better.
Okay.
And it's positive in that sense, yes.
What is molestation then?
Again, molestation, in legal terms, it could cover a number of things. When you say somebody is molesting someone, it could start from verbal molestation, and then it could be a physical, and then sexual in nature. So it depends, because each offense is defined. There's no, so when people in the media say he's molesting her, that's just a phrase.
Right.
In legal terms, you need to be clear. And I'm sure when the person is charged to court, there'll be precise definition of what it is said that this person has done, or alleged to have done, to be precise.
Okay. What's indecent assault then?
Well, in any assault, which it can be indecent in the sense that touching somebody who doesn't want you to touch them, in the olden days, hitting a woman, for example, on her behind was okay for some people. But now that is an indecent assault because the person doesn't consent to you touching them in that way. It could be touching in any other part of the body for sexual purposes or sexual gratification. Then that could amount to sexual assault in that sense. So there are ranges. It could range from just touching over the clothing or touching under the clothing, because in terms of sentencing in England and Wales and in UK generally, the sentencing range goes higher if the touching was over the clothing or under the clothing. And it could be a finger, in a part of the body where which is of a sexual nature or for sexual gratification.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. What about sexual harassment?
Again, those who went to a university in Nigeria or studied in Nigeria, one has to be careful now. In those days, all of this went as part of toasting.
Yeah.
Pursuing a lady at the bus stop, and she says, I'm not interested, and you persist, and she's telling you she's not interested. So it could be harassment when you continue. In some cases, they might even exchange telephones with you, and you start ringing them repeatedly, consistently, when they don't want to speak to you. They may want to speak to you today, but they don't want to speak to you tomorrow. So the harassment could be of many natures. Sometimes, in this day and age, people have started to email. It could be on social media, on Facebook, where you persistently pursue somebody who's not interested. Yeah. So that could be harassment. It could be knocking on their door repeatedly, and it ranges.
Right.
And that's or turning up at their workplace, turning up at their home address. In those days, it used to be said this is a determined pursuit, but it is abusive to the person who doesn't want it.
Exactly.
Yes.
You will recall the clip I sent to you yesterday regarding an unfortunate incident whereby was it a traffic warden going to a young lady's school, a minor of 15, and allegedly was sending text messages which the father claimed to have seen. What would you, how would you interpret that? Would that fall under sexual harassment or what?
Well, it depends. To start with, I'm very troubled about or seeking to comment on particular issues or in the sense that what we saw there is very disturbing. Nobody knows what he's talking. Somebody's talking about making an allegation against someone, sending text messages. We've not seen it. That is something.
Let me create a scenario. I'm sending text messages to you, and that I'm interested in you. You know, you're light skinned.
You'll be so lucky if you to send me text messages, but I'll be flattered. But what I mean to say is, look, there's an age gap between the person who was sending. It's been sent by an adult to a child,
right?
And there was such allegations being made. The person was then being assaulted, in public.
Right.
It doesn't matter. This is a civilized country, we're told.
Yeah.
If you've got something to report, you report it to the authorities and let them deal with it. Because if you've got text messages, then you show it to the authorities. Right. They will deal with it. The person doesn't seem to be somebody who could escape, or you've got his badge number and so on and so forth.
Right.
But a serious assault was then going on. That is jungle justice, effectively. Okay. And there's nothing that can't be justified on any view. So, but also, I also appreciate people, men or pedophilia, effectively, those who have sexual desires on children.
Right.
And there are vigilante groups up and down the United Kingdom who entrap people into such things, and then report that person to the police, and the police then take it up. Okay. But it's not an excuse to be taking the law into your own hands. That's mob justice, and that's absolutely wrong. Okay. And I think those who are sharing it shouldn't really be sharing it, and the vitriol surrounding it, where people are sharing it and almost saying, convicting that person
already
and condoning the violence that was being exactly. The police officer who murdered George Floyd, for example, whatever George Floyd did, even if he spent false money or fake money, counterfeit money, doesn't mean that he should be executed on the street corner there and then.
Yes.
He's to be taken into the police station, processed, prosecuted, and then the law would take its course. So that's why that man, the officer, was convicted of murder, whatever degree it is, because it doesn't matter what this man has done, you process him. Same with all these videos being circulated where people assume, and people are putting it on their pages and condoning violence against a suspected.
Yes.
So all of those, I think, should be people should not be circulating such things. The man could be reported, it'll be investigated properly and carefully, and then the authorities can then the law can take its course.
You mentioned something to do with a vigilante. That would lead into this question. Is there any law of entrapment in the UK?
Well, there's what is known as agent provocateur, which is people who, or police officers sometimes, or individuals who incite somebody to commit an offense or invite somebody to commit an offense. For example, sometimes, I've given one example of somebody going on websites where pedophiles frequent and pretend to be a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old child, say to the person, do you know I'm 12 years old? The person says, yes, but can we still meet? And they start to exchange. The person starts to groom the presumed 12-year-old. Now, that is an agent provocateur. He's invited the person has then proceeded to groom the child as if he was a real child. They weren't to know it's not a real child.
Right.
So there's those type of things, but you will never find a real child being put at risk. What will happen is it will be a presumed young child. Right. The person then grooms the child, and that's evidence which will then be produced in court that this person had that intention. And many times people have been convicted, even though they've been incited into it. If the thing is, if you are not that way inclined, if somebody starts sending me text messages, I'm a 12-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
you report it to the police.
Right.
Or if somebody sends you photographs, indecent photographs of abuse or sexual abuse of children, you report it.
Right.
You don't start circulating it yourself.
Right.
So, and sometimes it could be drug related, where police officers undercover come up to you, and some people may have seen that in the streets of London, where somebody comes up to you, have you got a light? Have you got some spliff?
Yeah.
Now, if I'm not interested in spliff and I don't sell it, I'll tell the person where to go. But if I then say, yeah, all right, then give me £5 and you pay, and the person pays you and you sell it to them, although you've been kind of incited to it, but if you're not that way inclined, you will not deal with it. So, but there are rules of engagement, which, of course, you cannot go beyond just mere asking the person. And if they engage, then that's their problem. Then they will be convicted for the offense. But if you go further, such that you're now getting involved in such a manner that is provoking or making things up, or you're allowing a child to be abused physically, then you as well may be be guilty of another offense, which is arranging or facilitating sex on a young person. Okay. So even though the person who committed the offense is also guilty, then you too may be guilty of something else. Okay. So yes, there are rules of engagement, but the evidence obtained from that process is admissible in evidence in court, and in most cases would lead to somebody being convicted for an offense.
Thank you. Is there any statute of limitation in the offenses relating to sexual abuse of minors?
No, because we are now dealing with a lot of what we call historical sex cases, sometimes 50 years ago, where somebody was abused or claimed to have been abused. And then years later, they are coming out with the story or account of what happened. Those are being taken up and you'll be prosecuted. There's no limitation to it. So even things that has happened in the 50s and the 60s in the UK generally are being prosecuted. It doesn't matter how long ago it is, so long as there is evidence, either oral evidence from somebody, either from the alleged victim, then there we have it, it's there. So there's no limitation to those type of offenses.
What's a bailable offense? What does that mean?
That is another thing that is being bandied around insofar as in the Nigerian context. Now, as we know, when somebody is charged with an offense, they're remanded in custody if there are reasons to believe that they will interfere with witnesses, or they might escape, or they might not turn up when they're asked to come to court. So you have those circumstances where the bail, they can be subject of bail pending the prosecution of the case. It doesn't matter. I mean, in murder cases, for example, you know that bail doesn't come easily. Not to get too technical about it, but in cases where somebody is alleged to have committed a particular offense, if there's concern that if he's released, the first thing he would do would be to look for the alleged victim, in order to either intimidate them to drop the charges, or try to persuade other people, including family members, to speak to them to drop the charges. In those kind of cases, sometimes the person is not released on bail pending the prosecution. But it doesn't mean that the person can't be bailed. They can be bailed pending. But the debate going on in the Nigerian parlance about it is, I think, this is very misleading, because the fact that you're released on bail doesn't mean that you won't be prosecuted. It doesn't mean you still can't be found guilty eventually and then receive a prison sentence, if depending on the seriousness of the offense.
You know, when they detain a suspect here,
Yeah.
Under 48 hours or 72 hours?
Well, there are time frames.
Okay.
Where the first 24 hours, where you can get an extension when an officer of a particular seniority is told about it and they sanction it. When it now becomes more than 24, another 24 hours, which is 48, then you have to go to the magistrates to ask for an extension of that period of detention before the person is taken to court. Right. In terrorist cases, then there's a longer period of detention, of being in police custody before the person is taken to court. Right. They can then, when they get to court, they can then be remanded in custody till the case is resolved. But there are strict time frames which you have to abide by in order to protect the suspect, so that they're not just kept in custody for a longer period of time than necessary without their case being mentioned in court.
Right. Could you rule out charges before being arraigned before the courts?
Could you what?
Could you rule out charges to a suspect before they are arraigned in courts?
Yes, they have to know.
In custody, and then all of a sudden, before I even get to court, the charges have already been released. Is that possible? Or under what circumstance might that be possible?
You mean to the public?
No.
Is that what you mean? Or
no. What I'm saying is somebody's been detained.
Yes.
Longer than the time frame that you specified.
Yes.
And, I'm sure they've informed the suspect. And then the next thing is, before the person gets to court, you begin to read out charges. Under what circumstance can that happen?
Well, the person, before they go to court, would be told what charges they face.
All right.
They have to be told.
Right.
Oh, you're facing. Firstly, they will know why they're arrested. They have to be told. In whatever jurisdiction, even in Nigeria, you have to be told what you're arrested for.
Right.
And then if you're going to be charged after an investigation, then you will be told this is what you're charged with.
Yes.
Before the matter goes to court.
Right.
So you can't just take somebody to court and then retrospectively think about what charges you're going to, because otherwise the court itself doesn't have jurisdiction. If you're not charged, you can't be put into court.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Unless you're talking about a particular scenario where people are paraded in front of the public before they are even investigated, even interviewed or give a statement. In Nigeria, you give a statement. In the UK or in England and Wales, you are interviewed by the police, which is a question and answer session.
Right.
As compared to you writing your statements. Which happens in Nigeria.
They write statements. In the UK,
yes, you're interviewed.
Actually interviewed. Okay.
You're asked questions, specific questions. You're told why you're there. Then you're cautioned, which is you have a right to remain silent. But if you fail to mention so on and so forth, a lot of people have heard those cautions being read out. Then you're given the right to have a lawyer present if you want to, interpreter present if you want to. And some people, an appropriate adult if they've got mental health issues or any form of disability.
Yeah.
But you won't be paraded and, in the general public where you are told, where people are asking detail, the media.
Yes.
Are now asking questions. In the media where you're asked by journalists, we're now asking you questions in front of a police station, some of which sometimes later on in the course of the trial may not even be admissible. Those kind of things should not really be encouraged, where people are paraded in public and by the police, and the journalists would then be asking them questions. Oh, who gave you the gun? Why did you go there? How many people have you kidnapped? So on and so forth. Yeah. Sometimes these things will end up being inadmissible because the person may have been tortured. And they're happy to say whatever you want them to say in public, but all of that may then end up being excluded when the trial itself comes up. So I think it's a practice that is becoming in this age, social media, that is going on particularly in Nigeria, which shouldn't really be encouraged. So yes, but you would need to know what the charges you face are before you are taken to court. Right.
Now, let me just create this scenario. I'm actually your client,
yes.
And one has committed an offense, sexual abuse of a minor, and then I tell you it's a spiritual attack. Is that admissible?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, as in what?
Well,
will the court listen
that's your
to that
defense.
That's
if you say you're my client, first of all,
attack,
I would say,
and
where's
then
my
I
fee?
bring in my and then I bring in the traditional man who said when he actually looked at the oracle said, yeah, there is a spiritual thing. And I came to you and I told you about it. Is it admissible?
Well, that's your defense. If that is your defense, I've heard a lot of, in my time, a lot of defenses, which, some people say they heard somebody appeared to them and told them to do it.
Right.
And people have told me many things.
Yeah.
If that's their defense, my duty would be to advise them, well, this defense will not be believed by a jury of your peers. But if the person insists that is a voice that told them, or somebody from their village influenced their minds, although of course I will be asking my colleagues who are psychiatrists to see them first to make sure that there are no psychiatric issues, that they're fit to plead, they understand the charges they face, and they understand the court proceedings, what is expected of them. And then the psychologist will test their IQ to make sure that they are they don't suffer of any disability. If at the end of it, the specialists tell me this person is of sound mind, but that's his defense, then of course, as ridiculous as it may sound, then I've got to run it.
Okay.
And the people in the jury, in Nigeria, you appear before, is a judge only.
Yeah.
They're judge only cases.
All right.
It's judge. There's no jury.
Oh. Okay.
In the UK, you have jury, which is 12 people picked at random from the public to sit on your case to decide whether you're innocent or guilty.
Right.
Or in Scotland, I don't practice in Scotland, but I know they have 3 types of possible verdicts, which is guilty, not guilty, or not proven. As in, you may be guilty, but the case against you has not been proven.
Right.
And then you're acquitted. Yes.
Now, my final question to you here is, in the UK, there is a sex offenders register. How long can the sex offender's name remain on the register?
Well, it depends on the sentence that you receive. So, for example, if you got a sentence of above a particular more than 7 years or more, you could end up on the register for life. Those who get below 3 years sentence, there's a period of time that they will be on the register. And the register means that your name, your address, and every time you move address, you've got to declare where you are. Right. You've got to sign in to the authorities to say, I have now moved from Oshodi to Ikeja, GRA, and this is where I'm going to be living, and you need to be coming to the authorities, reporting to the authorities. If there's a condition that your laptop or your phones must be accessible to the authorities so they can see if you're interfering with children again or sending messages to them, and you can't have any security measures on your laptop, that means that you can't, the police can't get into it. So depending on the sentence you get will determine how long you're going to be on the register. It's starting from 1 year, 3 years, and in some cases, it could be for life. In some serious cases of rape, it will be for life.
Right.
For the rest of your natural life, you'll be on the register. But smaller offenses, again, I don't want to minimize the seriousness because it's the person who is affected will tell you how it affects them.
Yeah.
Touching somebody when they don't want to be touched can make somebody have mental issues for a long time to come. And in some cases, people never get over it because they become paranoid that anytime they walk down the street, somebody's going to touch them inappropriately. So, but there may not be offenses that then attract you being on the register for more than 12 months or 3 years, in some cases 3 years. But once you've been on the register and you commit further offenses, then the period of time that you're going to be on the register will also be, if you're convicted again, it will also be reflected as to how long they need to keep you there. In some cases, up to 10 years.
Right.
Yes.
Final question. Under what circumstance can they use or give out electronic tag to a suspect?
Electronic tagging happens in two ways in the United Kingdom, in England and Wales, for example. If you're on bail, if you're released on bail, you may have an electronic tag, which limits you to where you live. It can give you a radius of where you live, or otherwise it could be you need to be in at a particular time. So that will be connected to your telephone in your house. So if you breach that condition, then it will tell the authorities that you've breached it and they'll come and pick you up. Also, when people are being released from prison early, let's say they've served half of their or a quarter, depending on what sentence they've received, they could be released on tag. Again, it's an electronic device which tells people where you are effectively. So if you're told you need to be between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., you have to be indoors, and you're outdoors, the tag will tell them that you're not abiding by your conditions. Right. And you'll be picked up. Or if you're not allowed to move beyond a particular radius, maybe you're not allowed to go more than a mile from where you live, right, or you're not allowed to enter particular areas, then of course, those will be transmitted to the authorities and you'll be picked up. So that's what electronic is. It's just a device. It's attached to your phone and a computer somewhere else. Okay. It's just like your phone as well. Your phone, when you move around, your phone tells people where you are, even if you don't know, it does. And or your iPad may tell people where you are, or some people sign in to Facebook. Everywhere they go, they sign in, right, and tell the burglars that they're not at home. Yeah. So all those things, that's what it is. That's what an electronic tag, and that's how it works.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Lane, for giving us comprehensive information about the criminal aspects of this topic that is so disturbing. That's how I can put it. Let me quickly flip back to Mrs. Yinka Adeyemi. Do you have anything like electronic tagging in Nigeria?
No, we don't have that yet. We don't.
Okay. Now, you live in Nigeria. You know the culture. Is the African culture so much entrenched in traditional practices as well as religion, which is one of the biggest problems that we have today. And I came to you that I attended let me just use an example of a white garment church. And there was a vision that is a spiritual attack and everything else. And I put that out to you. Would you accept that as a prosecutor, public prosecutor? That yes, I understand where she's coming from.
So sorry. Can you take it again? Can you take it again?
Yeah, if it's a spiritual attack, given that culture and our environment, would you accept spiritual attack as part of my evidence?
Certainly not. Just like Mr. Lane said, you can bring that as your defense, but I'm sure
even though we know it exists. Let's be honest. let's be honest, it exists. And that's why, part of, there was a gentleman who was meant to actually join us, and he's a high chief. Of course, that would be the third person, and he has debunked. And I know the reason why, because he was telling me very deep things, that there's so many traditional practices within our culture. These are abominable acts being committed, and the excuse is always for rituals or for fame, power, and fortune. So that's part of the reason, because when these people are interviewed, even on Facebook, they always say, "Oh, it's a spiritual attack, or it's for ritual purposes," and then they keep on doing it, and usually with their own daughters. Is usually an adult male to his own daughter. So when somebody comes up to you that is the work of the devil, it is the traditional practice from the area in which I come. How do you manage that kind of situation? How do you process such information?
So, unfortunately, our evidence law does not allow this, because what the evidence expects, it's something physical, something that you can see, something that you can document, something that somebody will tell you and they will see. So, having something in the spiritual realm is not considered as good evidence under our law. I know that there's a part of criminal law that talks about criminal charms and all that, but even that has to be seen physically, and you must have committed an offense through that. So the spirituality has no basis under our law. Unfortunately, I understand what you are saying,
Right.
because we've been confronted with so many of these things, but unfortunately, nothing under our law can protect that.
Who is considered a minor in the constitution in Nigeria?
Okay, so the constitution does not specifically state the who is a minor, but only talks about a person who has attained the age of maturity, and that's 21 years and all that. But typically, because when you have to deal with children,
Right.
you're talking about the Child Rights Law or Child Rights Act,
Yes.
and the age is 18 below.
Right.
So for a minor, under the law of Lagos State, is a child under 18 years.
Oh, for Lagos State. I think for Lagos State, is
only me or
considered as somebody under the age of 18?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that would be a minor is considered as a child under the age of 18, whether male or female.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Whether male or female, absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Well, the last but not the least panelist, and thank you so much for hanging on despite the fact that you are in Nigeria. The last but not the least is this lady. She's the founder and head counselor at Attitude Development International, an organization focused on promoting professional counseling and also counseling education in Africa. She's an associate chartered mediator and conciliator with ICMC. She's a member of several counseling and psychotherapy association and president of the African Network of Professional Counselors. She's a seasoned counselor with over 16 years experience working with individuals, couples, and families. Her focus is on emotional wellness, mental health, self-discovery, trauma, abuse, addiction, and sex recovery therapy. Welcome, Dr. Timi Oyebode.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. A good day. Depends on which side of the world you are joining us from.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Oyebode, you were a victim of sexual assault. Can you briefly share your story with us?
Oh, okay. It's an interesting topic that we actually have here, and I happen to actually be a victim of sexual abuse, of child sexual abuse, actually. And then having to live through that from possibly around the age of 7 down, at least the earliest memory, was that an uncle of mine who lived with us was more like fingering or thereabouts as at that time. But then what had happened was that continuously from one person to the next, and then to the next, it becomes a circle. So of family members, of spiritual leaders, of mentors, people who were supposed to serve as guidance. And so I went through the circle from the age of 7 till probably like the age of 17, 18.
Wow.
You know, having to endure all sorts of sexual, emotional, and physical abuse. And so it's a space I understand very well. And I've also had to, on the journey of recovery and healing for myself, I went through all the effects. I was suicidal twice, and then I had to go through depression. I had to go through a lot of trauma. Okay, and so healing was a journey for me. And then at some point, I was able to get my life back in order because I had to now go through a lot of the effects, that comes, when the other panelists were speaking and talking about some of the effects of sexual abuse, include even sexual dysfunction, addictions, and a lot of so many messy stuff like that. Okay, so that was my journey. That was my story till the point where I began to go on the path of healing. And of course, by the time I was able to get my healing, I understood I needed to go out there to help other people heal, and also to become a voice, to identify or to know what to do. So I stand more in that space of healing for victims of sexual abuse.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, was it very difficult for you to tell someone, to tell an adult that this was what was going on?
Oh, okay. As at that time, I actually tried telling. Okay, and this question is a very beautiful one because it brings my attention again to adults who are around young ones, because children repeatedly always try to communicate, but they communicate in their own way. They might not be very vocal or expressive about an abuse, but if you were sensitive, you probably would know the child is trying to communicate something to you. I remember the very first, one of the strategic ones actually was a very principal person in my family, in my life. And I think at that particular night, the whole family, we probably were watching TV and we had gone to bed, and I slept off in the living room, just like a child and every other person. And I think in the middle of the night, I probably felt hands over my body. And I woke up, and then I saw that, oh, it's this big person, this, the more or less, this, well, I call him a father figure because it was a guy that was an elderly person in the family, but this was an extended family, So I ran up and I ran into the room, but I couldn't sleep. I think I was around 12 years old about this time. And I was wondering, oh, did I imagine it? Did it happen? Was he touching me? That was Big Daddy, that kind of thing. And the next morning, I had walked into the kitchen and I saw my mom. And I said to her, Mom, why didn't you wake me up to go to bed yesterday night? And she said, oh, everybody slept off. And then I repeated the question again. Why didn't you wake me up to go to bed last night? The same answer. And by the third time I asked the question, of course, like a typical mother parent, it was a morning, we were supposed to get ready. I can't even recall whether it was to go to school or, So the answer was, excuse me, can you go get dressed for the day? Go, like, why are you wasting time asking an unnecessary question. But then that was one attempt to tell someone, because if she had probed further, oh, why are you asking me? You know, maybe I would have been able to speak more. At some other time also, I think I had also spoken to another lady who was much older, and she told me point blank, nobody was going to believe me. She told me this is a, nobody's going to believe. That was the way she just put it to me. At another time also, I spoke to somebody again, another elderly lady, and she told me that she was also going through abuse with the same person who happens to be a spiritual leader. And so she can help me because she's going through the same thing. Now, most of the time, like I always talk when I tell young ones also, of course, as at that point, after a while, I think I kind of shut up, as in I didn't even bother trying to tell anybody anymore. Okay. But then now I always encourage them to keep talking, keep saying it till someone will react, till someone will do something about it, you know. But necessarily, I think to some extent, I tried to talk, but then I didn't get the response or the help that was needed, because maybe the people involved didn't know what to do or how best to help. And I think that's even a strong factor that we need to put into this conversation about sexual abuse. What do you do if a young person tells you about abuse? Even if you're not a social worker, you are not a police officer, you're not a lawyer, what do you do? How do you respond to this young child trying to tell you something is happening? And I think those are important things to consider.
All right. So how have you been able to move on from the traumatic experience? I mean, you're lucky, you're married, you've got children of your own. How were you able to move on?
You know what got me smiling? When you used the word you were lucky. Yeah. I wouldn't know whether to accept that term. Okay, but in all truth, I would tell you it wasn't funny at all. Right. It's a journey that I know it's not luck that got me out of it. The journey that it wasn't about luck, it wasn't about it was deliberateness. I had attempted suicide twice. I was more or less dead, if not for Providence that kept me. So it wasn't luck. It was a point, getting to a point and realizing, no, I need to get my life back. I need to, whoever had messed me up, they've done the best they could do. It's left to me to pick up the pieces of my life and make something out of it. And I began to look for help. I began to seek for it. I began to cry out. I understand the principle today, how the perpetrators, the abusers, the pedophiles would rather have you shut up, okay? But then the only power you have is the power of your voice. And so if you can keep on using that, you will scale through. And I think that was it. At some point, I got to a point in my life, I knew it's either I heal or I drown, okay? And I chose to heal. And so I started the process. It wasn't easy, like I said. It's not something like, oh yeah, so you just, okay, you know, you just healed and then you just got married. No. I remember even meeting my husband. I remember telling him my life journey. I was messed up in all ramifications of sexuality. Candidly, I was involved in all sorts of sexual perversion you could think of. Okay, lesbianism, homosexuality, all sorts. As in, I was just messed up. Okay, and so by the time I was going through this process of healing, and I met him on that journey of healing, and I told him point blank, okay, this is me, this is my life, this is my story. Are you sure you want to marry me? And he said, okay, yes. He wants to marry him. So it was, I remembered also years into the marriage, of course, when the struggles of adjustment also started coming up, okay? This is somebody who, because I probably needed to put this for the records also, that at some point began to hate men with a lot of passion, you know, and so having to learn to love, having to learn to accept all the people, having to learn to know that the people who hurt me are not the same people who are presently in my life, because you tend to react to other people based on your pain, and that process was actually a beautiful one. And I remember maybe a year or two into the marriage, and I told him that I feel a strong urge that I need to be out there. I need to go rescue other people. I need to let other people know there's still hope for them. And I still remember the first reaction was like, "Oh my goodness, you mean you want to go tell your story?" And today it's so beautiful. We go around sharing my story together to let people know that you can actually heal. It might not be easy. It's not a journey of 1 year. I have been on my healing journey now for more than 18, 19 years. I think the process started around 2001, 2002. I think that was when I had my first encounter. I actually met somebody, a lady who had picked on me and told me, "You see what? Your life actually has a purpose." And I remembered also one of my uncles had seen me and said to me, "Girl, what's wrong? Your life is just messed up." And I remember, very saucy, answering back, a big girl, university babe, and I had said to him, what's your business with my life? When I needed you all to help me out, nobody was able to do that. So why are you interested now? And I think that was the first person, because I just said, bluntly, like I didn't care, and I just said how that, when this so-called person, when that person was doing stuff like this, nobody did anything. And that was the first time somebody stood up for me, and he was a man. He stood up for me. He actually confronted this big minister, this big man of God he was the longest of all my abusers, that was continuous for a long time. And for me, that was amazing that another man stood up to say this was wrong. So it's one of the messages I also take out there, and I tell men, as many men who can stand up to say no to sexual abuse, whether towards a male child or a female child, the more control, because the men actually has a lot of voice and a lot of stamina when it comes to these things. So once they can also get involved in this conversations, it's actually going to go a long way. So that was it for me. So my healing journey is continuous. It's never ending, like I tell most of my clients, and everyone, I keep telling them, your journey is a continuous journey, and till we get it right. So
was that big so-called big man of God, was he convicted, or was it just a discussion that you had?
No. Remember that we're dealing with family issues here. We're talking the usual Nigerian style of family issues. Most abuse actually happen within the family system.
Yes.
Actually, most abuse. And I lost my dad at a very tender age. So I had father figures who were supposed to take the place of my dad. Yes, and it was actually one of them, that was a big, and this is family. In fact, I remember when this uncle of mine that I said reacted years later brought it up, it became a big family issue. The whole family sat over it, and amazingly, rather than help me heal, that sitting over it even added to the pain.
Right.
Because at that meeting, the conversation centered on the fact that, this girl is either possessed and is trying to pull down this man of God, or this girl, of course, the man of God, he didn't deny it, okay? And the excuse was that your eyes were seducing me. Now, that was a 12-year-old girl's eyes. That was a 13-year-old girl. That was a 14-year-old girl. This was a process of years, and according to the system, that didn't help, because what that did to me was to tell me, don't look at anybody, so that they won't accuse you of your eyes seducing them. So my esteem went down, straight down. In, I go to the point I won't look at anybody because I don't want you thinking I'm trying to seduce you with my eyes.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that's the excuse some men actually use. And this is why I always tell people, especially ladies who have young children, maybe they're divorced, single, separated, or whatever it is, you can always tell that. I mean, for example, if I were to use myself, as an example here, I raised 3 children by myself, but there's some certain friends I would never ever allow them to come into my home because because I've got 2 young men and a lady. I've got 3 children. They're adults now. There are some friends that I know I would never allow them to come near my home because you could just tell that some people have tendencies. And that's one of the messages I just want to put across to people at times, that you could tell. I mean, even though you want a father figure for your children or whatever, but one has to be really, really sensible about it. And at the same time, you find we keep on talking about men, but there's some females too who are abusers, because you will see one, oh, you're a big boy now. Let me see. Oh, you're big down there. And before you know it, you find some, well, I have some friends who will share with me, do you know that the first time I stepped with so-and-so person, it was actually the female house help or one auntie who came to stay with them. So one has to be really careful
even beyond that
around
now,
your children. Yes.
You know, even now that we have a lot of homosexuality out there, you'll be shocked to know that many are being introduced into gay or lesbianism by an elder partner.
Yes, or even domestic staff. Yes. But talking about yourself here, do you find yourself overly protective with your children because of what you've been through?
Okay, so I think maybe naturally, if you've been through something, you become more sensitive actually. Okay, and more observant. Okay, so but I wouldn't say I'm overly protective. In fact, I would give that more to my husband. Okay. Because he knows my story, he knows my journey, and he knows many things that happened even when he was a child too that people don't get to talk about, things like that. But I think for me, I understood the principle of how abuse actually takes place. And I understand also that most of the time, fear is a strong hold. Okay. And if we allow fear, you would realize that you become unnecessarily protective, and still, the child will be abused right under your roof. Okay. And so understanding that the best way to protect is not being afraid. It's not being excessively protective. Okay. But teaching the children, giving them the skills that they need to understand, and then letting them know that you are available to talk. If anything goes wrong, being accessible. Okay, is the key thing. And then they know how to defend themselves. They can have these conversations with you straight up. I think that is more better than being unnecessarily protective. Because what happens once we take the overly protective stance is that you make the child even vulnerable. There are some street sense that the child is supposed to have that they probably will not have because they were not exposed to some of those things.
Right.
Okay. So, for example, in my house, we might not be so comfortable with having uncles, aunties living and all of that. Okay. At the same time, we have people who come around to live in. But what we just do is to make sure that their stay is limited. So once you come in, we already have the time frame of when you're leaving. So you're not coming indefinitely. And then whenever anyone is coming, the children are prepped again. They understand the principle of sexuality. They understand protection. They understand that there are people who have wrong sexual mindsets. And being able to be sensitive to identify, even as a child, is key. Once you give those tools to a child, I think we should be comfortable and let them have access to report.
I think you've just answered the next question I wanted to ask you. However, do you at times get flashbacks?
Oh, okay. Maybe I probably won't call it flashbacks anymore. Maybe some years ago, it was a lot of flashbacks. A lot of it actually. Not just even flashbacks. You have a lot of dreams. Okay. Even dreams of someone having sex with you, dreams of you begin to have terrifying dreams. okay, which is one of the effects of sexual abuse, actually. And then at some point now, I probably would remember some things, and then I will remember and then smile, because I understand the power of my thoughts, the images in my head, and the responses I give to them. So flashback would come, okay, because the brain is like a computer; it stores information, and there's no point trying to block it out. All right. So rather, once they come, I play them through, and then I pick lessons from it again. Right. What could I have done better, or how could I have done it better?
Fantastic. But it's because you're a very strong individual. What if it's somebody else? How would you be able to help them through the services you provide in terms of counseling?
Okay, now this is the point. Okay, and that's why I wouldn't say again that I'm a strong person. I would rather say I am someone who decided not to sink.
Right.
Okay. Yes. And that is what I offer to everyone who probably needs this help right now. To make that decision not to sink. That is all. Once you make that decision, help is available. And then we begin to go through the process of help. One major process of help you might consider is actually to go into therapy. Okay. Once you get into therapy, there are techniques, strategies to help you heal.
Right.
I've had people ask me questions like, oh, is it possible to actually heal? Can you forget? Yes, it is possible to heal. You may not forget what happened, but you can remember what happened without feeling the pain. And I think that's the core thing. Once we can get to that part where you remember what happened to you, but you're not pained,
right,
as if it's happening to you afresh, then you know you began the journey of healing. Yes. And the journey of healing also, once, like I said, go into therapy. Two, I would always say this, is to speak out. Get to say it out, whatever it is that has happened to you, find someone to tell.
Right.
Abuse thrives in secrecy. The trauma is breathed more through secrecy. So once you can say it out, you first of all gain power over it. And like I would always say, what happened to you doesn't define you. What happened to you is meant to be a stepping stone to purpose, to life generally. Okay. So also what you can then do, okay, if you are still struggling to go into therapy, okay, and you want to do it, but you see, reality is this: in as much as self-help tools are available, in as much as many of us want to heal by ourselves, the reality is that when it comes to trauma, particularly sexual trauma, the way we are created, it's better you heal with connections. If you try to heal alone, you will end up detaching yourself from the connection, the human feel. Sex is not just the penetrative vagina and penis, it's about connection. And so it's important that the journey of healing should involve other people, which I would always say in a safe space of a therapist.
Right.
You get the point now. So those are the major key points I would put out there, you know, to say you want to heal. Of course, another thing you might want to consider, if you're thinking, oh, I've been on this journey for a long time, I want to heal, is to also look immediately around you for sexual abuse groups, because I understand that there are some like group NGOs or people who provide support for people who have been through abuse. Just being able to assess all of this could really go a long way. You know, a young lady recently called me that she was raped, and unfortunately she couldn't find any therapist where she was. Beautiful. Thank God for online support and services now. Okay. But then one strong thing I said to her was to go into the health center there.
Yes.
And just go and tell the doctor, tell somebody, just say it out of your mouth. Once you can say it out of your mouth that this happened to me, you have gained power. And I think that's a very strong factor that we might need to begin to consider. Many have not spoken about their abuse. for years. Many have become adults and they've never told anybody what happened to them. And I think it's time you begin to do that so that you can heal.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. Very much appreciated. And really and truly, that's going to lead us into solutions. And you provided us with some solutions. How do we begin to change the narrative? Because you just mentioned it is better for us to speak up and speak out, because we have this culture of silence. That's the thing with us. Or we just look the other way, we ignore. And that's because we always attach stigma to things like this, that, oh my goodness, you know, is chief so and so and so. I'm the daughter of one top politician or whatever. I cannot speak out in public. And this is why we need to be talking and people to go for therapy. That's why we have the counselors, the psychiatrists, the psychotherapists, you know, and also for the perpetrators or people who have these funny urges before they land themselves in deep trouble. It's better for them to visit the likes of Mrs. Ronke Adeyemi, the psychotherapist there, the psychiatrists. And I also have one psychiatrist here with us. I think I have two of them as well. It doesn't mean they are mad, but then again, if there is some sort of chemical imbalance, they need to address it before they get into trouble. I mean, just like what Dr. Oyebode was saying, that, oh, it's because of the way she was looking at me, seductive eyes. It's not going to be admissible in the court of law. The likes of Mrs. Yinka Adeyemi, she will, you know, make sure that the prosecution takes place. There is no room for it. It's totally unacceptable. You know, DCP Agbonika will say, oh yeah, you know the way they even question you in Nigeria. So you've just got to be careful. And I just want to briefly take Otuba's question, because he's had his hand up since. I'm not sure whether he's still there to ask the question he wanted to ask. Are you still there,
yes.
Otuba? Okay,
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Now, it's just like having listened to the process and procedure of prosecuting an abuser, we all agree that it looks like it varies from one place to another. Yeah. My question will go to the prosecutor of Lagos State, Lady Yinka Adeyemi. How is it for people of timber and caliber to get away with prosecution or prosecuting people who have abused young people in Nigeria, and put into consideration, judging from how very, very corrupt the judiciary in Nigeria is. I'm also a legal person and I know what I'm talking about. How easy is it to get people who have loads and loads of money to get away with murder? The question goes,
Mrs. Yinka Adeyinka, do you want to quickly take that question? More okay. Like what he's saying was the question I asked you before. Is anybody above the law? You said no. Even on YouTube here, I have somebody saying that the prosecutor says nobody is above the law in Nigeria. We all know that this is not true. Big men get away with crime. And that's exactly what Otumba Oseni has just sort of like echoed. Okay. So how do
you... just like I said, nobody is above the law. The law is very strict. And once a case is investigated, don't forget that before we prosecute, the case comes from the police. So once the case is investigated and comes to the table of the DPP will look through the case file to see whether there is a probable cause. And that's what we call the prima facie. But with the evidence we have in that case file, we can't prosecute that person. A lot of people, some of these cases have been tried online or on social media. Sometimes they are not probably one of the reasons why we feel that some high up there are not prosecuted is probably because no enough evidence, to really prosecute the person. And I said something earlier on that the most important and critical thing or person in a case or the success of any case is the prosecuting witness, is the witness. Yeah. Once the witness is compromised, once the witness has been begged somehow, once the witness has refused to come, you will find that nothing is going to happen. So sometimes it looks as if it's the DPP that is not prosecuting, or it's the judges that are not doing what they ought to do. And that is the challenge that we have in these, when we are prosecuting. I don't know about any other jurisdiction, but I know that in Lagos State, once you are being the legal advice, looking through the files sent to the prosecutor of DPP's office, looking through it, once we said there is a case to answer, we will certainly go ahead to prosecute. But the only thing that we can stall that is what I just said. If the witness develop cold feet, we're talking about high people and high profile people, anything can happen. They might have gone to the person, convinced otherwise. I know that sometimes, yes, that some, witnesses are compellable witnesses, but you don't want to have a witness that is hostile. The whole effort of prosecuting will be wasted. And sometimes the witness will even leave the jurisdiction totally, and that will be it. But if we have witnesses around, be sure that we will do our best to prosecute.
But Mrs. Adeyemi, doesn't that mean that you should have a strong protection for them then? That the system needs to be revised, or there should be some sort of reform whereby they will feel comfortable in giving, statements, that they wouldn't be so scared.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, and that's what one of the things that we are doing with our witness support units, where we will let the witness know. But as you all know, sometimes some things we do not have control over. Yes, we have started an outreach now to the society, to the communities, talking to everybody to let them know that they do not have to be afraid of anybody, particularly those whose witness, who's maybe the perpetrator are the landlord or the chief in the community, or even the uncles and all that. We've been reaching out to everybody now to say that they have the backing of the governor, of the state government, so that they will always come out to give evidence.
So from the legal perspective, then, should we all agree that they should tighten, they should tighten the law up to a certain degree? Do you agree with that, Mr. Lanley?
Yes, I think one of the things which has happened in the English jurisdiction is there are special measures which are put in place for alleged victims or complainants in sexual offenses. For example, the first stage is when somebody is reporting a case. They are then sat down with specialist trained officers, who will have what is a recorded interview with them. So that interview is recorded. They give chapter and verse of what has happened. It's recorded, and that will be used as evidence in the case. From then on, that person doesn't necessarily need to confront the person that they're accusing, because there will be special measures in place. They can give evidence via video link. So they're not in the same courtroom as that person. They also can give evidence behind the screen, which means they're not confronting the person. And also, they can be even cross-examined. And that is now going on at the moment, where even the lawyers will cross-examine it on video. So it's all recorded. So the person doesn't have to have any contact with the person's concern. So even if they're going to have cold feet, if they understand that, look, you don't need to repeat the evidence again because it's been recorded. And that is what the jury are going to view. They will view that video. And then when you need to be cross-examined, you don't need to be in the same building. So these are the kind of measures which have been put in place in the UK, which can be adopted. It's not rocket science to record what somebody's said and to make sure they don't need to confront the person again.
Yes.
We are on that track right now. Excellent. Because now we have
Okay.
What we call statement taking room, where they are now recording the statements of all the victims, including even the defendants.
Yes.
And we have insisted as the prosecutor that without, we won't even accept any case file without the recorded video of
Okay.
the
And
investigation.
Yes, and I also think the full extent of the law should be applied, irrespective of the person's status in the society. I think, you know, the powerful message go out, and that also it should serve as a deterrent to other sex offenders, whoever you are, you know, that the full extent of the law should be applied. So that's, you know, from the legal perspective, I think. And I think there's some reforms as well. There should be some reforms, because in some other states, you're saying is 18, because when Mr. Ogunade was talking about 8 years, and I was like, what? This is, you know, so I think reforms should actually take place across the board. You know, there should be a blanket definition of minors, even though we're aware, because in this country, I'm sure they would actually look at it that there seems to be a legitimate sexual abuse of minors. If somebody is getting married to a 12-year-old in another state, 12 or 13, or one old man who is about 90 years of age is, you know, having harem of young girls, young enough to be his great-grandchildren even. So, you know, I know poverty is part of the problem, but then again, you know, anybody caught, irrespective of who they are, they should actually be receive custodial sentence as appropriate. That's my view. And obviously from the perspective of the police, I think DCP Agbonika would agree with me here. There should be more training as well. And the way they interrogate minors, you know, in fact, everybody, and then with minors, it should be really different, because I mean, again, I will refer to the WHO, what they have here, that when children are approached, you know, they should be approached with extreme sensitivity and their vulnerability recognized. They should try to establish a neutral environment and rapport with the child before beginning the interview. They should assess whether they are, you know, mentally fit to be questioned, not, oh, so what did you do? You didn't go to school at all. You know, this brash attitude needs to stop, their brash approach in interviewing people. And, you know, to establish the ground rules for the interview. Ask the child, describe what happened. I know he mentioned the fact that they use dolls and things like that, which is very good. So, you know, a lot of work just needs to be done. And also these traditional practices, it needs to stop. Whether to go into the rural areas to let them know, all the local community leaders, they have to be educated, because this is what RAM is for, to create awareness on topical issues and also to educate people, you know, that this is wrong. It will earn them a custodial sentence if they know that, and that begging will not do the trick. Also for the fact that you don't come and say, even though we are from Africa, you know, we talk about spiritual things and whatever, it's not admissible in court. So if they are aware of that. And then I want to talk about education briefly. I have an educationist here with me. She's Shade Fadikbe. Briefly, if you could just unveil your, to switch on your video camera, that would be greatly appreciated, because I saw something again on social media where children are singing songs. What would I do if somebody touches my private part? I will tell it to my daddy, I will tell it to my mommy. What if the mommy is the perpetrator? What if the daddy is the perpetrator, or even the teacher that is teaching you the song? How are we going to cope with that? You know, and I'm thinking to myself, when we were all growing up, whatever happened to Baba Black Sheep? Whatever happened to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star? You know, and then we're singing these funny songs. What, I mean, what's your, I know we have to introduce some safeguarding, you know, strategies, but what's your take on this, Mrs. Shade Fadikbe?
Good evening, everyone. I'm trying to understand the question, but also because of all the thoroughness that has gone ahead, I do want to commend you and everyone that has made a contribution towards this very pertinent conversation. In terms of how we teach children, about how to communicate about their body, about their privacy. Because children learn in different ways, there's actually no one way in particular that we can go about this journey. However, the key thing is that the home and the school have to align. What is being taught at school has to be brought to the fore of the parents. The parents have to agree with the strategy that is being put in place by the school. This is a partnership. Now, where that partnership breaks down, where there's a mistrust in whether the school is teaching their child properly about sexual education, or whether the parent is the one who's not doing the right thing in making sure that they provide a safe environment for their child, there will be a breakdown in communication. So as parents, we need to be knowledgeable. We need to be appropriate. So whatever aspects of sexual education we're teaching our children about, it has to be age appropriate. You're not going to tell a 5-year-old child about the actual act of sex. Neither are you going to tell a child who is going on 16 not to talk about sex, because at that age, that is probably the one thing they do want to talk about. And if they're not talking to you about it, they're definitely talking to their friends about it. So as a culture, it's an area that we've shied away from over the years. And even I still get accused by my children of not exposing them, not having enough conversations about sex, about sexuality, about their bodies. But that's a different era. We're where we are now, and there's more enlightenment because of the internet, because we're more of a global village. And so there's more information that is coming through to them. So there are benefits of technology, but there are also the adverse effects of technology, and how we use them is very important. So that question that you just asked about children singing songs and talking about how to deal with any form of harassment or abuse might be the strategy that is best used within that context. Yeah, I will tell my mom, if you touch me here, so that might be appropriate for that context. And that's, in a way, that's empowerment. For some places, that may not be right. It might actually be the one place you don't want to talk. You might find that if the sexual harassment or, abuse is taking place within the home, then that child is just blabbing away, and it's rubbish to the child, because actually they're not going to tell their parents what's happening.
Hold it right there. In the UK here, can you imagine school children singing such a song?
Well, that's why I talked about the context. I can't imagine them singing such a song. But we
touches my willy, I mean, come on, you can do that at home, but definitely not in school.
Yes, but you have to consider the context. You may not do that, but that may be what is right for that context. So I will not undermine it. I can't imagine it going on here, but I wouldn't undermine it if that's the right thing for that context, to talk about whether now it's not right that they're not using the right words. Right. You wouldn't talk about, you would call it penis, you'd call it vagina, but that's the context in which they feel empowered. So that wouldn't happen in the UK, but definitely if that's working, if it's making them talk more about what's going on and them feeling empowered, go ahead and do it. This is about empowerment. Okay. This is about making the child feel, this is my body. No one's got a right to touch it. No one's got a right, I'm a child. Even if you ask permission, I'm a child. I don't know what you're asking me about. So you've got no right.
Okay. Now you are the author of several children's books. Can you imagine yourself writing a book on if you touch my you know what? And you're okay,
Is that a challenge?
won't you?
Is yes, yes. Not that I've thought, it's not the kind of thing I don't write. I write fiction, but it's not, it's you'd go around it in different ways. You wouldn't be that direct about it. You'd create a story from it. There'd be a build up, and it could just be, every story's got a beginning, a middle, and an end, and in that middle is when the trouble happens.
Yeah.
And so you'd build up from it. You could also use create non-human characters to, it's about privacy and infringement of privacy, whether it's, one part of the body, whether it's something that belongs to you that's precious. It could be translated such that children understand that this is mine.
Right.
You've got no right to come close to it.
Yeah, especially the way we used to do in Africa in those days. Oh, even if it's a parent, oh, you're growing now, and then they begin to touch boobs. Here you find the kid saying to you, no, that's mine. You don't touch. So I suppose from educational perspective as well, the police officers should be going to schools, giving talks in school, and also to pass on the message. If anybody has one funny orientation or kind of inclination to start touching people, to make sure that they curb the excesses, there and then, or else they will land themselves in trouble. And I believe also every educational establishment must have safeguarding methods of protecting children in their care, including any facility at all that takes care of children. For example, like the orphanages in Nigeria is springing up now. That's the thing in Nigeria. If something is trending, everybody is going into it without having experience. And you just hear, oh, I've got NGO for this. And they don't even have, a clue to what they're doing. And then again, you say, oh, I've got orphanages, or, oh, in my house, I put so many people here, about 6 or 7 people or 10 people, because their parents cannot afford to take care of them. So I think a lot of education needs to go in there. I'll quickly just take 2 more questions and we'll probably leave it there. Chika, what's your question, please? If you can quickly unmute and let's have your question.
Yeah. Thank you so much. The previous speaker,
yes.
I thank her for some of the things that she said, but I'm not quite sure why it's alarming that children should sing about parts being theirs and then not to be touched. Right. I've been a governor at a primary school for 12 years. I'm in the UK.
Right.
We have worked very hard to attain a rights respecting award, which allows our children to feel empowered within themselves on what are their international rights as children. Yeah. And these things are laid down by the United Nations and etc. And part of their rights is the right to their own bodies. And people should not, and that the right for them not to be inappropriately touched without telling. So the emphasis is on telling. So whether the words are sound unpalatable or not, the focus is on communicating it. And the lady that spoke previously, the doctor that spoke previously about her lived experience, one of the things that she had a challenge with was actually communicating her circumstances for other people to believe. Now, I find it quite extraordinary that the gentleman who was a legal person said that 8 years old is a child, and then started saying 10 to this age is adolescent, and then et cetera, et cetera. I find that remarkable that there's even that breakdown, because even the UN defines a child as anybody under the age of 18, So
Nigeria we're talking about here are different states with their own laws.
I've been listening and I've been thinking, wow, that's all I've been thinking. Wow. I don't see how anybody, personally, I think from my point of view, if I had to put an age of consent, it would be 21, but I don't see how anybody under the age of 21, that's me and myself, for me personally, I don't see how anybody under the age of 21 can give consent to somebody that's considerably older, because the thing is, what they have is they have authority, they have age, they have opportunity, they have all of those things, and they may have gender, in their favor, you know, and all of those things are now because I always say particularly men, I always say to men, if you're talking to a girl and she looks quote unquote shy, she's underage. Bam. If she's not, if the conversation is not flowing, just take it that she's underage. If she's told you where to go, then she's of age. You understand? And just keep on walking. Exactly. You know, with regards to the video that you talked about. Now, I know that the barrister said that it's alleged, because anything visual is alleged until it's proven, blah blah blah. Exactly. Anyway, one of the things that the father did say is that the daughter gave the man his phone number. So the man thinks he's been texting his daughter, but he's been texting the man. So he had everything on his phone, allegedly.
Yes.
Allegedly, right? Yeah. And even the girl telling him that she's 15 and he said she thought she was 18. There's absolutely no way you live in the UK and you see an 18-year-old in school uniform. It doesn't happen. It may happen in Nigeria, but it doesn't happen over here, you know, because the age at which you stop wearing a uniform, quote unquote, is 16. Sixth form will, once you reach year 12 and year 13, so sixth form will have a dress code. You know, they may have a dress code, but it's not a uniform. So the head of the school may say the dress code for year 12 and year 13 is that it has to be smart dress, no jeans, no trainers, and you have to wear a proper shirt, no t-shirts or something like that. So you have to dress like as if you're ready for business and not that you're ready to go out and hang with your mates.
Yes.
So I suppose the point I wanted to make was purely on that, the sing-song thing that you were talking about, where I think children should be always, every single time, be encouraged to communicate. How it is done, I think, is almost by the by, but they should always be encouraged to communicate, because gagging a child is one of the most damaging things you can do. And in my experience as a governor, if not for the fact that I had done that role for as long as I'd done it, I would never have believed that even some of the most subtle, I sat in a safeguarding training session, and they ran a video that only lasted for a minute about the method of a paedophile, right? And I only lasted 2 minutes. I got up and I was in tears outside, because I couldn't even take the way they were questioning the guy as to what his motives were. You understand?
Yeah.
And we had to take time out. And I must admit, they did warn us in advance that it might get a bit emotional. So if people want to take time out, they could take time out. But these are, if not for the fact that I've done the work of a chair of governors, been responsible for a school that's about 1,200 children strong, I would not have ever believed that things could occur either with staff in the school, children to children in the school, because that exists as well, because there's peer-to-peer abuse that takes place. And a lot of the time it comes from a place where a child is being abused already, and then they now start abusing their own peers.
Yes.
You know?
It's so funny to talk about the peers, because I could remember when my children were in boarding school in Nigeria. This is one of the boarding school stories, and there was an incident whereby one guy was constantly, during the time that they were having trouble, they would actually be touching, the boys' private parts. The moment he was, would you believe he was expelled? School. There was no excuse in any shape or form. So sending out very strong message, that it's not acceptable, sexual abuse in any shape or form, sexual assault, every legal terminology that Mr. Lanley is actually giving to us today. And then when it comes to prosecution, regardless of whoever is involved, that the person needs to be prosecuted, and I also think that there should be promotional campaigns across the states in different local dialects in Nigeria to create more awareness, amongst the uneducated. Go to the rural areas, meet the local community leaders, and people should just have self-discipline. There should be, somebody said to me earlier, sexual emotional management. People should try, somebody shouldn't be looking at a minor, a child, to say, oh, you've developed very well from the last time I saw you, oh, you're looking this. They are looking for trouble. So let me just quickly take this question from Mr. Ogwade. Do you still have the question, or we've answered any question you might have?
Yeah, mine is a little contribution, which I think is very germane and fun, very important.
Yes.
And that's the issue of the first institution in the world. And it is because that institution has been debased. That's even why we are talking about this issue. Right. And I hope maybe the next time, or if we have the opportunity, people should look into it. And I'm talking about marriage and the marriage institution. And because homes have issues, that's why we have behaviors that are not in consonance with societal expectation. And that's why we have people abusing minors, because I see no reason why people will be abusing minors, taking advantage of minors, raping and committing all these sorts of immoral activities. So if definitely there are issues and advocacy around it too, just as you said some few seconds ago, that all those who are influencers, who are opinion molders should educate and advocate about it. The same thing should go in terms of promoting the true culture and values of the family, where parents will teach their children morals. If I teach my children at home, you teach your children at home, definitely when they go out to the larger society, they will all learn how to correct themselves. But when this fails, then definitely it will bounce back on society, it will bounce back on you, it will bounce back on me. I hope we can do a lot on this in this regard too. Thank you for this opportunity.
Fantastic contribution to actually end it. I'm just quickly going through this myth or fact, and it's just less than 5 minutes. I just need a yes or no. You can unmute yourselves. Well, when I call you, please just say, an abuser is only a man. Mrs. Ronke Adeyemi, yes or no?
No.
Okay. An abuser is someone you do not know. DCP Agbonika?
No.
Okay, a victim is always a female. Can I take that from Mr. Lanley?
No.
Okay, a minor is someone who is over 10 years of age. This is where we have conflict. A minor is someone who is over 10 years of age. Chika, in your own opinion?
For me?
Oh, Chika is not answering. Okay, Mr. Ogwade?
No.
Okay, a parent can never be a sexual abuser. Mrs. Yinka Adeyemi? Yes or no?
No. Yes.
So what you're basically saying is that a parent can be a sexual abuser?
Yeah, parents can be a sexual abuser. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, fine. The rule of law must be obeyed regardless of status. DCP Agbonika?
I didn't get, I beg your pardon?
The rule of law must be obeyed irrespective of status.
Yes.
Only a father can abuse a child. Mrs. Fadipe?
No.
Okay. A teacher cannot sexually abuse. Mrs. Fadipe?
So can you?
A teacher cannot sexually abuse.
I disagree.
So a teacher can?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Spiritual problem
and usually do.
Spiritual problem can, yes, it's true. During my time in school, we knew some teachers who actually impregnated some students. Spiritual problem can never be accepted as evidence in a court of law. Mr. Lanlane? Yes or no?
Well, it can always be acceptable if it's a defense. That's my answer.
Oh, really? You mean
yes,
here?
That's what I said earlier. Everybody
you know what
has the right.
They will say you are a fruitcake.
No, everybody has the right to present their defense, even as ridiculous as it may sound.
Is this admissible in court?
Well, it is, if that's what the person is saying. And I did qualify it by saying, of course, I'll have the person assessed by a psychiatrist and a psychologist, but if that's what they're saying, that's what they're saying.
Okay.
It's admissible, that's their defense. They may be found guilty, but that's their defense.
Found guilty, not acceptable. Yeah. So the next question, any inappropriate touching by an adult, even a close relative, is unacceptable. Dr. Olubile? Any inappropriate touching by an adult, even a close relative, is unacceptable. Yes or no?
That's correct.
Okay. Law of entrapment cannot be accepted in a competent court without prior knowledge of the police. DCP Agbonika?
Law of entrapment.
Yeah, cannot be accepted in a constitutional court without prior knowledge of police. Okay, let me go back to Mr. Lanley. Law of entrapment cannot be accepted in a
it is admissible evidence. It is admissible evidence.
Well,
and
without prior knowledge of the police?
Yes, if the police is an arrangement between the police and the person who wants to be used as, just as he said, they call it star witness or agent provocateur.
Okay.
Agent provocateur, yes.
Okay. All right. The next one, counseling is a form of therapy to deal with past sexual abuse. Dr. Oyebode, yes or no?
Say that again.
Counseling is a form of therapy to deal with past sexual abuse.
Yes.
Good. Dr. Olugbile, this is a question for you. A cleric, whether pastor, alpha, white garment shepherd, traditional chief, can never sexually abuse a minor. They can
That's not correct.
Abuse. Yes or no?
That's not correct.
Okay. So they can sexually abuse.
That's true.
Right. If sexual assault takes place in church, better to pray for the accused and the victim. Mr. Ogunade.
Yeah, you pray for them, but again, the law will take its course.
I'd like to hear that. That's the message we want to send out. Police should conduct thorough investigation without bias. Do you agree with that, Mrs. Yinka Adeyemi?
Yes, I do.
Investigation. Okay. Now, the safety and mental well-being of the minor are paramount. Mrs. Ronke Adeyemi.
Yes, correct.
Next question. Parents and guardians of children must ensure that they are protected at all times. Mrs. Padike.
Yes.
Good. No one is above the law in a case which involves sexual abuse of a minor or any case at all. Mrs. Yinka Adeyemi.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Sorry?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yes,
no one is above the law. For any case.
No, any case.
No one is above the law.
Okay. Now, my next question, which one comes first? I'm talking to the counselors now. Trained counselors or social workers should be present when a minor is being interrogated, or the minor is assessed and deemed fit for interview. Which one comes first? Mrs. Ronke Adeyemi.
I think the minor will be assessed first.
And deemed appropriate or fit in order to go ahead with the interview. Okay. No excuse whatsoever can justify the sexual abuse of a minor, even if he or she looks older or dresses in a provocative manner. Dr. Olubile.
That's correct.
What is correct?
There's no excuse that will justify the sexual abuse of a minor.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So you can still lead a normal life after being sexually abused. Dr. Oyebode.
Exactly, that's true.
Very true. My final question. Everyone should be given fair justice. Mrs. Adeyemi. Yes or no?
Yes. Yes, correct.
Thank you very much. So, thank you so much for coming, everyone, especially my panel. You know, it's been a wonderful evening here. You've the valuable contributions, honestly, from the legal perspective, psychological, even traditionally, because we touched on it a little bit, and as well as the legal aspect. So I hope people have gained something from this, and we just all have to be on our guard, and we should teach our children or grandchildren, as the case may be, or the young adults around us, And also, no one is above the law. The rule of law must be obeyed wherever we are. And that's the message we want to send out to everyone. And for whoever is listening to us, if anybody's been affected by what we've discussed here today, maybe they were victims, or some people will say they're survivors. I would say the likes of Dr. Timi Oyebode, she's a survivor. Some people will consider themselves as victims for whatever reason, and they begin to have flashbacks, or they are just affected by all of this. Please try to seek counseling. And if you want to go for psychotherapy, Mrs. Ronke Adeyemi's details will be posted very soon, as well as Dr. Timi Oyebode. And even if it's for legal reasons regarding what we've discussed today, the lawyers are here. And any questions you might ask, I'm sure nobody will want to ask DCP Agbonika anything, because he's a police officer. And maybe, Mrs. Yinka Adeyemi being a prosecutor, because you are quite, you know your stuff. And at the end of the day, we just have to be mindful about how we go. We have to also imbibe the culture of the host nations that we live in. The way they behave back home in Africa is different from, developed nations. So one has to be really careful in the manner that we speak with people. I mean, Mr. Lanley gave us, the differences in all these things, sexual harassment. He talked about toasting one way or the other. If anybody is schooled in Africa, we've been toasted before, even maybe years ago here in the United Kingdom or in other nations. We just have to be very careful. The law is the law. We don't want to get into trouble. So on this note, I say thank you very much for everybody who has attended, and even people listening to us on YouTube. Thank you so much to all my panelists and the people on the Zoom platform. My name is Anfumi Fatusin, and I'm the founder, convener of Renewing the African Mindset. You can find us on the different platforms, all the various social media links. On this note, I say goodbye and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.